Everyone to the September 25th meeting, the Winchester School Committee at the Parkhurst School. It's 7 o'clock. I'll run quickly through our agenda. We're going to be taking some things out of order tonight, but as printed, as always, we have public comment period. Excited that we have Massachusetts Association of School Superintendent Certificate of Academic Excellence Awards for 2 students tonight to be presented. We have our student report from Nate Burns and our new co-representative, Evan Edler, who will meet in a few minutes. We have listed under reports and discussion items kind of a first pass at Dr. Evans's goals for 18-19. Under action items, we're going to see the latest revision to our district goals and improvement plan. And then we have a vote to approve a use of consent agenda rule, which, if that passes tonight, is going to make a real change in how we conduct some of our business here moving forward. So I won't run through all the details in the consent agenda other than to say we have a number of grants and gifts from many generous parties. We have a presentation and an approval that's requested for an overnight trip for the music department. We've got a couple of sets of minutes and a second look at some policies, and I skipped the appointment of the superintendent to the SEAM Collaborative Board. I'll say, just pause and say we're going to take the music trip out of that list right off the bat because Nick Costello is with us tonight, and he's heading out of state north here in a few minutes, so we're going to be sensitive to him and his time needs. Then we'll come back to the consent agenda later tonight. We have a chair report, an update from Dr. Evans, and some future agenda items that we can review together. So having said that, let's take a few things out of order. I'm going to pause on the public comment. I'd like to jump to the MASS presentation, and when we're done with that, Judy, then we can pivot to Mr. Costello and talk about the music trip.
Sounds great.
Take it away.
So if our 2 student recipients, Corey Easton and Matt Schneller, can come up and sit at the table. I want to say a few nice things about you before we hand you these certificates. The Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents is an organization. There's about 370 or so school superintendents, and the purpose of this award is to really honor academic excellence, not defined just by GPA, but by a wide variety of other measures. These 2 students I'm going to talk about have distinguished themselves during their high school careers. So I will give you some background on each one, and then I'll give them an opportunity to speak. It's always helpful for them to share anything they'd like to share about their experience in our school district. And then we will give the certificates and have them shake your hands and take a couple of photos. So I'll start with Corey. Corey Easton is an outstanding student, placing her among the best and brightest of a very talented class. She has routinely sought the highest levels in each discipline, and her academic excellence has been acknowledged with induction in National Honor Society, Spanish National Honor Society, and a National Merit Commended Student. Corey has been recognized with awards from English and Social Studies departments, highlighting her intellectual leadership, excellence in citizenship, service, and her writing skills. Corey is a member of the Alpine Ski Team and has interned with Commonwealth Community Care. This opportunity provided her with a better understanding of the integrative approach of a clinical team and many of the issues that individuals face on a daily basis accessing and navigating the healthcare system. Corey's name has become synonymous not only with hard work and academic success, but strong character and compassion. So congratulations on receiving this award, Corey. The second recipient is Matt Schneller. Matthew Schneller stands out among his peers by his unsurpassed intellectual curiosity, leadership, and commitment to participation in an array of meaningful extracurricular activities. Matthew has demonstrated outstanding academic achievement in a most rigorous program of studies throughout his high school career. He is a leader among his peers, president and founder of the Winchester High School Business and Economics Club, treasurer of the UNICEF Club. Matthew's outgoing personality serves him well in each of his endeavors, including as a tour guide at Massachusetts State House. He is a positive role model, a teacher at summer camp, and volunteers with Winchester Gut Lunch. Matthew is well prepared to continue successfully in each of his chosen endeavors. So please join me in congratulating Corey and Matthew. So Corey, would you like to say just a couple of words before we hand out the certificates?
I think I'd just like to thank my parents, of course, for supporting me and all my hard work and also inspiring me at the same time. And then just my teachers for being so passionate about what they do and sharing that passion with me and supporting me and pursuing what they teach. So
Great, thank you. Matt, would you like to share
Yeah,
anything?
I'd like to also thank my parents as well as my teachers for supporting me as well as inspiring me with everything they do and always having my back in whatever I'd like to pursue.
Sounds great. And you're both heavily involved in the college hunt right now, take it? No, no news on that front yet, a little early to have made a decision, right?
Don't add to the stress.
You never know.
that figured out yet?
Some people just apply to one, but nowadays people seem to apply to 10. So the choice is made later. Wherever you go, we'll be proud of you, and I know that you'll continue, both of you, in your pursuits of extracurriculars, which are as important as the classwork, you know, in terms of hope you keep skiing. And I know that there are business and economics clubs at every college, so maybe you'll take a leadership role there. So why don't we, I'll come and give you your certificates, and why don't we go over here
Good idea.
and take a couple
Picture.
photos,
Yep.
and then school committee members probably want to shake your hands and wish you well. So let's head over here for the picture part.
We also ask, after each student gets their award, you're going to be asked to pose with your parents too, so we get a picture of parents.
Yeah, they were the ones who really.
I think they deserve a lot of credit too.
Parents are welcome to stand up for their pictures.
You can ping me anyway and say, email me a picture.
Okay, great. There you go. Congratulations. Okay, Matt. Yours. There you go. First of many.
Thank you.
Okay, terrific. All right.
Parents want to get in on this for a photo?
Parents want a quick photo op with them? Is that one? Oh, one there. Here, okay. Great, we can send that to you. Thank you. And one more, welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Ms. Whittemore is known for sometimes taking videos instead
Tonight with pictures.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want to just come around and just shake hands of the school committee members?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let us sneak by the back here. A little tight. Get our bags.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, great job. Congratulations.
Well, you're always welcome to stay. I know you probably have a lot of homework, so feel free to head out whenever. But thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quite an honor.
Okay, so like I said, we're going to take a few things out of order. So I'd next like to jump to an item that shows up on our second page, which is an overnight music trip to Orlando. Since we've not voted a consent agenda rule, I just see it as words on paper, so we're just going to pull it out. And I'd like to welcome to the table Nick Costello. And Nick is prepared to speak to sort of the history of the trip, and there were a number of questions that came up about the plan. It's a trip that happens every 4 years-ish. Mary Costello was kind enough to give us some information that I think got to everybody by email this morning. But Nick, welcome, and take it away if you have any introductory remarks.
Just want to thank you very much for accommodating me. I appreciate that very
You
much.
bet.
on the trip. But we have been really lucky these last few years. Our program continues to grow and mature, and we've got a very well-balanced program now. So we're very proud of it. And this 4-year trip that we do every cycle is one time around for the kids to kind of go and perform in a place that is known for its wonderful music. So the students will go and they will actually perform in front of thousands of people, with Disney guidance and with some college professors from the area who will also evaluate them, give them positive and negative feedback, which is really important. And also they'll work in a few different settings. So one of the nice things about the Disney program is there are different opportunities for students to try other parts of their music experience. So they might do a dance class, they might do a performance class, they might do a studio piece, they might go in and do a recording work as well. So it's really kind of an interesting and important thing. Disney's the second biggest employer of musicians in the world. The only other one is the United States, Armed Services. So
Didn't know.
Fun facts at school committee.
so it's one of those places that, when you go, if you've been to Disney, you realize that a huge portion of everything you're surrounded by is the incorporation of music. It sets the pick for everything that you do. And what we're trying to do is show students that, this is not just a static experience, that you can actually use it for something that will be enjoyable. And I think this is a terrific opportunity for the kids.
Mhm. And Nick, can you maybe make some comparisons to, there was a Vanderbilt trip last spring that I think was on a similar schedule right before spring break. There was some experience with university faculty down there as well.
Well, we went to Vanderbilt. We spent a couple of days actually in Nashville. We performed and made recordings at Studio B in Nashville, as well as performing with other schools from all over the country. And we did really, really quite well. And it was an experience that students, again, having a live experience with people and college directors that'll come in and actually evaluate you and give you really honest feedback, I thought was really particularly important. The reason we put this time frame forward is because we've worked so hard to find a place in the overall schedule with the least amount of impact. And this is about where we've found it to be consistently. It's right after the plays, it's right before some of the testing season goes in, and right before spring sports really take hold. And so it's a unique spot, and we found that it worked really brilliantly last year. It was the best. We had the best prices for the trip because we were before the vacation. The travel was a lot less expensive than if we go even a day later. So that's why we ended up in that situation.
So Nick's reminding me the airlines are on to the Massachusetts school schedule. There are a lot of families who think, I'll just slip out of town a couple of days before spring break, and they're already jacking up their prices. May I open it up to questions or comments from the committee?
A couple of quick
Go ahead,
questions.
Brian.
About how many students do you anticipate will be going on this? I realize you haven't asked people to let you know yet, but
Just sure you're speaking to the mic.
Sure, I'm sorry. Is that better? Okay. So we think that we're going to have an order. The band itself is over 106 kids now. The chorus is in the 100 to 150 group, and the orchestra has really also started to grow again. So it could be somewhere along the order of 200 to 300 students. We'd imagine that there would be 1 per 10 for faculty and parent chaperone groups to go on that as well. So we'd probably be moving about 330 people, which is a big lift. But we're going to go as 3 separate groups. We're going to go at the same exact time. We'll be at the same exact venues, but we're going to try to isolate the experience just a little bit to emphasize the opportunities for each group.
and if I can just follow up on that for a second.
Sure.
I understand the reason for going on a Wednesday night. I still have, I appreciated the information you provided us, and tonight I'm concerned just a little bit right before April vacation, because that's when a lot of projects are due, and that's when a lot of exams take place right before. And so I'm wondering, what kind of coordination will you do with the school to help reduce the amount of stress that the students are going to be feeling to get all of their work that would have been due on Thursday or Friday done in time on Wednesday? It's a lot of stress.
Well, we'll definitely involve all the teachers at the high school with every step of the process. And we will also invite students to be really ahead of the game as far as their homework goes. We'll give them opportunities prior to leaving where we will not do a heavy rehearsal schedule the week of the trip. we'll try to make sure we give them some time to get ahead on that. Generally, the teachers have been really supportive of this in the past. This is not something that they're not anticipating. It's been done over the years, every 4 years. So it does take some coordination, but it's not something that, it also backs up to Holy Week for a lot of students, so we didn't want to get too far into that. This is really sort of the crease moment. Just before it gets there, we'll be coming back. So that's really why it was pinned that way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Comments, questions from anyone else? Susan?
Yeah, I understood that you needed to start planning this now because it is a big operation, but the thing we are looking to review in terms of like safety and planning, is, are you using any kind of travel agent
Yes.
or a trip organizer, and where you're staying, and
I have been on these things enough times now over the years to know that I never want to do things on my own again, especially with 300 kids. There's just too many moving parts. And when you're taking equipment, when you're trying to get, the town treasurer as well as the town's treasured to a certain place and get them back safely, I only do it with travel companies. We're looking at walker tours for the actual physical movement down and back, and looking to work with Disney for the interior space. We've done this in the past. Gail Iverson from Disney has been instrumental in really making all those parts work down at Disney, and they're fabulous that way. If you work with them directly, they cover all the bases. I have a phone number at any moment that I can call and make sure that everything's tended to. We'll get security down there as well for students, so that not only will there be a person for every 10, but there'll be internal security at the site to make sure that kids are where they're supposed to be. So. Does that answer your question?
it does. That's
Okay.
what I was. I realized that you have to get it to a certain point,
Yeah,
to plan
those
all
days
that.
of me going on, who's going to have what flight, and I'll meet you
Right.
down there. No, that I don't do that. There's too much that can go wrong. So we will definitely go with a travel agent on this part of it, and they seem to have worked it out pretty well. I've got that itinerary. If you'd like it, I'll send it along to you as well. The proposed.
I think so. I think what we're looking for tonight is support for this as a general concept. But as always, we reserve the right to ask for additional information shortly before and send it back to you and to me for sort of a final look.
Yeah, and my only concern was with this many students already, if, you're going to have a critical mass, and you're also going to have to, at some point, say, well, this is all we can accommodate, or, we can only take as many as we can get, adequate chaperone coverage for. I'm glad you're thinking well in advance, but that's the kind of thing we're concerned about when
Well, I certainly
are
understand
approving
that, and I
these things.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
We are always looking at that. There's so many moving parts with any trip that you take. Even when we went down to Nashville last year, there were just, equipment alone took weeks of
Hadn't thought of that.
preparations ahead of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, instruments,
So.
yeah. Okay.
And Nick, the Nashville trip included, there was a competition down
That's right.
there. Is it fair to say for this Disney trip, there's no competition?
There is.
There is.
There's an opportunity for you to go there and be evaluated with other groups that are performing
Okay.
as well. I don't tend to do the competition thing as a natural part of my thing. I think I like to have people come and evaluate the kids in a clean environment for me
Yep.
personally. I probably will opt for that. We did it last year as a competition. We did very well. So we ended up getting our gold medal and all the rest of that. So, but for me, it all depends on what you want to get out of it. I think for some aspects of it, it's
I asked the question, Brian's question just made me think back to last year, and you were saying you're not planning an uptick in rehearsals prior to the trip or
No.
anything. I'm thinking about student stress. My memory was with Vanderbilt, my memory is there were a few extra rehearsals.
That's because-
And the kids were
yeah.
excited about it, honestly. But there are those students who are balancing the heavy academic load. So I'm glad to know you're aware of that and thinking about that.
Well, that was a very unique opportunity, too. We ended up having a very unique crew of students that went.
Yep.
And it was very different. So we ended up making a special ensemble for that trip.
Yeah.
And students bought in. So they decided on the pattern they wanted to go to. They picked up the music with me. It was really a great opportunity last year. We had a lot of fun, and we learned a lot. So it was great.
So the action recommended is to vote to approve an overnight trip to Orlando. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have just a few questions.
Sure.
So there are gonna be other schools attending at the same time?
Schools go there, it's a constant flow.
Okay.
I mean, it's.
It's not like one big
No, it's
thing,
not,
okay.
this is not, I mean, there are certain festivals that they do there every year, but we're not involved with. You know, this is a particular time when there's a class setup as well as the performance setup. So we'll be able to do some of these adjunct opportunities as well.
And does funding, you said, I saw that it said limited scholarship, does that become an issue?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, we'll make sure we have whatever we need to do for students. That, you know, if you're going on a music program, we want to make sure that everybody can go.
Okay,
So
and my last question has to do more with sleeping arrangements. Are kids sharing beds or sharing room?
No, I really couldn't go into too much detail there. I mean, it's 4 kids per room, so it's probably 2 queen-size beds or king-size beds, and 4 kids per room, so it'd be boys with boys and girls with girls. You know, I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to. That's not my end of the thing. I know that is a big concern, but we've never had any problem with that. You know, the chaperones will be involved with every step of the way on that as well.
So who's concerned with that then?
Well, I ultimately am, but that's the tour group will assign the room situations out so that it is all taken care of.
My
ahead of time.
concern has to do with more kids who are in transition or whose gender identity doesn't match their birth gender. So
Sure.
are those kids accommodated if there are kids who have mental health needs and need separate space?
Sure.
Are those kids accommodated? How is it an isolating experience? Is it done well? That's
We
what I'm
will
asking.
do, we'll take advisement for anything that needs to happen and try to make it the most, enriching experience we can make for every student. I guarantee you from my end of the thing that if there's anyone that has any issue that needs to be addressed, we'll make sure that we do that.
Okay, so you'll survey the kids and make sure.
Oh,
Great.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll also ask students as to who they want to room with, and they'll have some input that way, you know, so we will try to make sure that
And
everybody's taken care of.
you'll be cognizant of any pressure of kids wanting to room with certain kids and not room, and then having the pressure of who do I room
Yeah,
with, and
that's always, that's always something. I mean, it's delicate. But we know the students differently. These are, after 10 years of knowing students, you can anticipate things differently than you can if you just see them for a semester here or there. These are kids that we've actually watched grow up, we've worked with since they're in 4th grade, and this is that last opportunity as an ensemble to get them out and do something unique. So we will, and if there's any parent, we'll do this with parents too. They'll be part of the whole discussion from the beginning and through it. The reason we wanted to get quick action on this tonight was we have the parent night and wanted to invite comment and some understanding of what's happening. So that's why we're asking to get here tonight. So I hope that answers your
Yes,
question.
thank you.
Sure.
Right. Thank you, Zena. Sorry, I didn't realize you had a question.
No
So,
worries.
Judy, before I open it up for a motion, any thoughts on your end?
So, in general, I'm extremely supportive of trips like this. I have chaperoned many a music trip as a high school assistant principal and principal, and have taken kids to Disney. And it really, they do it well. They do it with, I think, rigor and fun. I think it's a
Yes.
nice blend. There are really high expectations. I remember sending in audition tapes and are we good enough? And there's nothing like sort of seeing a crowd come and surround your bandstand or your performance space and people from all over the world watching you perform. Very few opportunities come our students' way to do that. So I'm really supportive of it. And I think the school rhythm expects this to happen where 200 or 300 kids go every 4 years. And I just want to commend both Nick and Mary Costello and Joel Buford for, it's a big, big effort and a lot of work and a lot of worry to take that many people to perform, but it's a memory for a lifetime for many of them. And so I think it's a great option. You've probably done dozens of trips over the course of your career. And so I think you can anticipate what some of the pitfalls will be. I think that the issues that Zena raises are coming up more regularly around the social pressures of 4-door room and gender issues and friend issues. that in the past people wouldn't have spoken up about and now are. And so I would ask you to build some flexibility into your price and the number of rooms you have to be sure, you know all these kids. You probably know the ones who are going to
Yep.
need a little extra TLC or some special circumstances. And I know you'll be sensitive to them, but it is something that kids are speaking out more about. And it would increase the cost of the trip to only have 2 to a room or to, make different arrangements. And for some kids, they'd put 10 to a room if you let them. So, right?
The
They wanna
problem
be
is
with
trying to
their-
get them out of 10 to a room when
Right,
they're there.
exactly.
So it's,
Phil doesn't really appreciate that.
They want to be
either.
there with their 9 closest friends. And so, so I think it's going to be a great trip. And I will continue to work with the Costellos and with Mr. Buford to be sure we support it as they plan.
Great. Thank you, Judy. So is there a motion?
I move to approve an overnight trip to Orlando, Florida from April 10th through the 14th, 2019, as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Nick.
thanks very much. Thanks for
Thanks.
taking the time
Please
tonight.
pass along our thanks to Mary and Joel, too.
Thank you.
And if you're looking for chaperones.
Volunteers, right
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
Right here.
Let's have
I don't know if
fun.
they know what they're in for.
I don't care. Just me.
That's a lifetime.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. So trying to kind of keep track of where we are. I'm going to bring it back now to public comment since we skipped that at the top of the meeting tonight. Is anybody here for public comment tonight? Ms. Court has something she'd like to share. Hi, Pam.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. As always, thank you all for the work that you do. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be leaving after this, and I appreciate that you all are going to be here until probably fairly late hours. So I wanted to talk about the school start time, but I wanted to also start with, I went to a talk today that was given by the Coalition for a Safer Community, and I had the pleasure of sitting next to Ms. Tan, who was my daughter's history teacher last year, and she was sharing with me that she's now the district service curriculum coordinator. Service. It was so exciting to hear about that. So that's really. So I just wanted to say I thought that was really cool. So I wanted to back to why I came for public comment. I wanted to just share publicly my feedback on what I've noticed with the change in the school start time. And I want to be very clear that I'm not speaking for everybody else, and I know that the rest of the community has, differing opinions on it. I'm just speaking for myself personally and how it's impacted our family and what we've noticed so far. It's been a really positive experience for us. My daughter, who sometimes would roll out of bed, barely get her clothes on in time to be on time for school and eat a protein bar on the way in, now has time to get up, to get dressed, to eat breakfast, and to go to school calmer and to even have a few minutes to spend with her friends and not feel so frazzled. My son, who is more of an earlier person who had less of an issue, one of the things I'm surprised to notice as big of an impact on him, even though he says he's not noticing a difference, he's going to school prepared. He's more organized. He has more time to kind of sit and be present with what's going on before he gets up and leaves the house and make sure that he has everything he needs. And it's something that he may say he doesn't notice. I notice it. Along with sort of these mornings that are calmer and sort of less stress-filled for my daughter, I've noticed it carries on throughout the day. So that when she comes home from school, not that I don't still sometimes deal with some of the just emotional, like I'm tired, I'm just sort of decompressing kind of thing, but I've noticed just in these few weeks of school that she's calmer for the rest of the day as well. It just seems like when the day starts off a little bit smoother for her, it finishes a little bit smoother for her as well. The one thing I am noticing is that just for after-school activities, it's a little bit more compressed time for getting homework and other obligations done. That just means a little bit less time on electronics. Sometimes they say they feel the pressure, but I just wanted to give feedback on how it's impacting us, because I know a lot of people are sort of buzzing about it around, but I wanted to sort of give a little bit more formal feedback and have it be on the record. And I want to thank everybody who was involved in the decision for the initiative, the school committee members who are present here and the ones who were involved in the decision who are no longer school committee members, Chris Linsky and Cindy Boney. I really appreciate that you all supported this, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Pam. I'll let Chris and Cindy know somebody came and gave them a shout out at a school committee meeting tonight. Anybody else for public comment?
I'm sure they're watching.
Oh, yeah, of course they are. Everybody wave. Hi, Cindy. Hi, Chris. Can't get away. Any other public comment tonight on matters on the agenda or not? So seeing none. Okay, I want to move on to, so under reports and discussion items, we have superintendent goals for the 18-19 year. However, because, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, student report. I'm sorry, my mistake. Thank you for speaking up. Evan Edler is here with Nate. Sorry, guys, you were thinking you were going to be here for another hour and a half. I apologize. Nate, we know you. You're a familiar face. Evan, many of us don't. Can I put you on the spot? You want to introduce yourself to us?
Sure. I'm Evan Edler. I'm a sophomore at WHS. I'm on student council this year, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We're happy to have you. So just a quick comment, as we've kind of our practice has been for the past 3 or 4 years. So as a student rep, if you want to kind of stick around after you make your presentation, you're welcome to do so. There have been some matters where Nate has been kind enough to give us his 2 cents, and we always appreciate that. But you've got an academic load and other commitments at home too. So if there are nights where you want to kind of come and give your report and then get home, that's fine. No offense taken. So welcome. What do you have to share with us tonight?
Let's jump into it. So I'll start it off. Of course, the biggest, I think, agenda item I have tonight would be the open house on Thursday. The Satrum's Market, which is a big gathering of high school clubs and organizations in the cafeteria, that starts at 6:30 on Thursday, and I know a lot of them are excited to sell merchandise to the public and their peers. A big fundraising opportunity, including student council. Again, that'll be in the CAF, and I believe the actual parents part of open house starts at 7.
Mm-hmm.
This past weekend, I'm proud to announce that we had a lot of student involvement in the Glenn Doherty memorial race, as well as teacher and administration participation, and it's great to see them all out there. I know several teams volunteered to help out, give out water, and others ran. So that was really nice to see. The high school is lucky to have a few national merit semifinalists this year, so I wanted to give a shout out to Tom Belair and Philip Vukovic. They will be...
And Nate Burns.
We will be hopefully submitting applications to move on to national merit finalists, and that again is based off of scores on the PSAT last year and extracurricular involvement and grades throughout high school. And I think the last I have is last year the student council had some concerns regarding school safety, and so we wrote a letter to the administration, and they took it to heart, and their response to it was a few more safety videos that they released to the high school, which just inform us what we do in the occurrence of an emergency, or extra additional information if there, God forbid, is something that happens. It's good for everyone to know. Pass it off to Evan here.
So I know there have been concerns about late buses at the school over the past week. We've had slight changes to the bus route, but mostly earlier pickups for elementary school and high school students. And we've been on time since Friday. So instead of missing 5 minutes of class, students are getting there before the first bell, which is good. In terms of the athletic update, we have golf beat Reading yesterday. Girls swimming won against Burlington. The football team is 3-0, which we haven't seen in a long time. Mm-hmm. And they actually had a pretty big win against Arlington with 41-15. And the girls cross country beat Burlington last week.
Great.
The last thing I have would be freshman elections. So freshman student council members have already been chosen and announced yesterday. and the freshman class government officers, and their elections and their speeches will be held during wind block tomorrow. I think that's all I have.
So if any of you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer.
Anything for these two? No?
Sounds good.
Okay. That was easy. Thank you, guys.
Actually, besides the buses, are you hearing anything about like Miss Court spoke to us about how her kids are feeling about later start time? Is there any buzz around the high school about that?
Yeah, sure. There's definitely a lot of buzz. As student council, we haven't had too much of an opportunity to delve into it as much as we'd like to, but that's on our agenda for tomorrow night. So I'll definitely have material to bring back to you guys next meeting about that. A lot of buzz, though, so we're excited
Great.
to see what comes out of it.
Look forward to hearing from you guys about it.
Yes. Let us
Thank you
hear-
very much.
hear from you.
So feel free to stick around if you'd like to, or as long or as short as you'd like. Okay, so thank you guys for catching me on that. So next on the agenda, as published, is Dr. Evans's goals for this coming school year under reports and discussion. However, we typically wouldn't really discuss that until we had voted our district goals. That's actually under action items. So I'd like to table reports and discussion for now and go to the update from Dr. Evans for our district goals and improvement plan. Can I ask you to begin that, Judy?
Sure.
Under section 6. There have been some
Page
changes that are
9, I
made.
think.
Yep, 9.
So thank you very much. So the leadership team and the school committee together have discussed the proposed 18-19 district goals and improvement plan. And we have identified 4 continuation goals and 2 new goals. And just for the benefit of those who might be watching at home, the first goal, which I've changed the order just to emphasize that this is the most important of the goals that we're working on this year, is addressing student social emotional development and wellness through the district wellness action plan. You know, we have a new Jason Levine, new director of counseling, health and wellness. And I added some more specificity around dates where we'll have the curriculum revised, where we'll look at reviewing informal social emotional programs and formal social emotional programs in the district, particularly as we look at ruler and expansion into middle and high school, and advocating for additional wellness personnel that we had considered adding last year but were not able to fund. So that's the first goal. So I added a little bit more specificity to that. And again, these are targets. The timeline is always longer for completion of curriculum review or curriculum revision because we have limited professional development time to involve teachers, and we want to make sure that they are heavily involved at every stage in the process. And so naturally, it just takes longer. The second goal is around meeting the needs of individual learners, where we're going to be looking at homework and grading practices. Now, I got a suggestion from a school committee member around why does this not have sort of some more benchmarks in terms of timing of this. And you might remember this is one of those goals where we think we have a lot of internal work to do around homework and grading practices with classroom teachers. So we'll start a study committee with them, and then depending on how many sessions we need to sort of develop together a deep understanding of what best practices would be in those areas, then we'll involve parents and community. So I don't have a specific timeline for that because I'm not sure how long the initial launch will take. It really has become clear from my conversations with teachers and the leadership team conversations with teachers that we have a wide range of understanding about what's best for students in terms of homework and grading practices, especially as it connects to deep and authentic learning. And so we don't want to rush it and make recommendations without a deep understanding from the practitioners first. And so sort of taking a little bit of a step back. One of the things we might want to do kind of parallel to that is to do a listening tour with students and parents around their understandings of what works for them in terms of homework and grading practices, without sort of involving a committee that's going to make recommendations that are going to drive program, if that makes sense.
Just a listening tour.
Just a listening tour, rather than a study committee that involves students and parents.
So can I just interject a quick question? So then, for instance, given what you've said, this is one reason why we see from when it was originally introduced back, a few weeks ago that we don't see increasing the use of flexible grouping practices, because that's a more sort of focused goal.
right.
This is now, we're at a higher altitude
Yeah,
here.
I
in
just, I
terms of
pulled it
study.
back to a higher altitude.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think what I would ask you to do is approve this goal with the understanding that you're going to get frequent feedback and check-in throughout the year on this, and have a chance to weigh in terms of the direction that we go with this. The MCIA work will continue. It's a multi-year grant that we're participating in, and so that'll continue sort of without a firm conclusion, well, at least for the rest of this year. Michelle has been attending a lot of those meetings, and I sit on the governing board, and now Jen sits on the working group. What's your official title of your
No idea.
working group for this? So we broke in sort of the governance into two.
Really important person.
Whatever it is.
People who do all the work, and then the governing board, so. And then the third step under here, which again, we don't have a specific timeline because I'm not sure how long it will take, really came at the suggestion of James Lynn, who's our middle school teacher, who thinks we need to accelerate our look at our teacher resource teams, which are the teams that try to troubleshoot together when students are having difficulty, either academically, social, emotionally, or other. And then Tier 2 intervention practices, which would mean outside of the regular classroom or in addition to the regular classroom. And so that's been an ongoing effort. The state has a mass tiered system of supports and interventions. Every school has a student support team or a teacher support team. We've had long-standing practices, and some of them clearly have worked well, and some have not worked as well. And so we're trying to, again, take a step back and see globally, K to 12, not just what happens in one building, but what happens for kids when they run into difficulty. So,
And my understanding of this is another sort of deep dive with staff right
Yes,
now, and
it's a
not
staff.
involving
Right.
parents or the community at
Right,
this
and it-
point.
and
And
it-
feedback on how those are working for their families and their kids.
right, that it's sort of to develop an understanding of best practice and then what's working and not working for us now.
Right.
And then involving parents and the interventions that students have had, how have they worked or not worked. Some of the lack of a coherent Tier 2 intervention system is because we have, I think, a little bit of an imbalance in our support structure for interventions. We have a lot of reading support intervention. We have very little other support intervention. We have no counselors, for instance, at the elementary level for intervention, which is, pretty serious gap there. So, so those are, again, kind of high-level dives into that. The third goal has to do with curriculum review and renewal. So I put, the first one is English Language Arts curriculum review. Target completion is the fall of 19. That includes, when I say curriculum review, that includes looking at all aspects of the curriculum. So defining curriculum map, scope and sequence, looking at types of assessments, looking at professional development, looking at materials, all of the traditional things that would go into a curriculum review. Health, wellness, and guidance, there's been an ongoing study group. That's a little bit of a different focus because it's, three kind of departments that have very different structures, and some are direct instruction and some are support. We're hoping to complete that by January of 2020. Science and technology, Jen has already started on the curriculum mapping piece of that. We do have Catherine Dwyer really supporting the elementary STEM piece. So I've got a target completion date of September 19 for that, which would essentially be a year from now. Mathematics, we haven't really started to tackle as a K-12 topic. We sort of started to tinker with some grade levels. 9th grade this year, for example, has had some changes, but we've got to get going on math. And then social studies, the state has changed the framework, so we've got to do that. So you can see sort of ELA, which has been under review. Katie Malone, the literacy director, has been heavily involved in that, as well as Jen. And then health, wellness, and guidance. Jason Levine is going to take over from Carolyn on that one. Science and technology is one that's been ongoing. Math and social studies to be determined. So, Jen, I don't know if you want to weigh in on any of this.
Math, actually, we have quite a bit done at the elementary level of the first phase. So we have definitely started on that, and actually, this has been a passion of Lori Kirby's for a long time, so she's actually started some workshops with elementary teachers on rethinking math and trying to get people to think about the concepts and the application and away from just the computation focus. And there's actually a group of teachers that are very enthusiastic about it, and they're kind of piloting and trying some things as we start to make curriculum decisions, what makes sense for that. So that's been great.
Lori was actually a part of the last math curriculum review team a long time ago.
Right.
It's in her blood forever, I guess.
Yeah.
We will never let her leave the committee.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question on this before we move on to the next? So I just want to be sure we're clear. So your first bullet, in terms of what it is we're trying to
Yeah,
complete by
curriculum. They're all
September of
curriculum
19.
review.
They're all curriculum reviews?
review. Yeah, the word curriculum review needs to be inserted
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Got it.
Susan had a question too.
That was sort of, I was thinking that health wellness guidance was a little bit different, might not be curriculum review, but the others, I wondered if they, same question, if
Right.
that's what's going on.
I think of curriculum instruction and assessment like being
Yeah.
sort of a triumvirate. And so when I say a curriculum review, it's not just sort of what should students know and be able to do and kind of define that in terms of a map, but it's all the other side pieces that go into supporting that. You know, what particularly professional development, materials, what do our assessments tell us, standardized test scores, other sorts of assessments that we're doing, reading assessments, for example, in ELA, and what kind of practices are we engaging in. And the outcome of an old curriculum review would be choose a program, buy everyday math, buy a
What I was going
reading
to
history.
ask, this is like back in the day, do we get a new set of math textbooks? This
Right.
is not what we do nowadays.
So Jen and I are not big fans of textbooks, and so, and I think in this day, open source really gives you a lot more options as well, and textbooks are extremely expensive and can be kind of rigid in terms of being a program, so, but it takes longer to write your own curriculum.
So, yeah, we've actually been doing some exciting work around that with a bunch of other districts. So a consortium really got together about the science and said exactly that, where we want meaningful, hands-on, authentic learning. And we are across many districts, so it kind of forced the issue of open source because different people will use different materials, which I think wasn't necessarily a driver in the beginning and was such a positive outcome that we're starting that consortium now with social studies as well, and with that same theme for the positive outcome we've seen with people building curriculum that way. So actually our first meeting is in October.
So primary source documents are great to use when possible, and I think a lot at the elementary level we use a lot of different level texts for nonfiction reading and writing now anyway. So I would hate to see us sort of buy a social studies textbook or a ELA series that claims to do, phonics and comprehension and writing and everything else sort of in one tidy package. Usually when you buy a program, it can be limiting. Although for math, particularly everyday math has served us very well. The efforts for teachers to improve math instruction are more about authentic learning experiences and application because our scores on MCAS and other tests have shown us that our kids are really able to apply the concepts pretty well. And so this is not an opportunity where we're trying to quickly make a decision to buy a new program to fill a hole that it doesn't exist. So this is building on something that's already pretty excellent. So.
And not to beat up the old way we did curriculum reviews, but it's worth me mentioning, so the last time we did it was in math, and a specific recommendation was to go with everyday math, a spiraling curriculum, so that has proven to be pretty successful. There were also recommendations around improving communications to parents, particularly at the elementary level, around what's coming in math, to direct parents to resources, and I feel like the district really hit that in spades. And then other things that are perhaps a little more controversial, like leveling. We didn't have leveling at the middle school, but that was a specific recommendation. So, I'm really looking forward to when these reviews are complete, what they'll say, because the last time we did it was some pretty meaningful, kind of game-changing stuff, actually.
So in that, you remind me that we've recently done a world language curriculum review. and that a visiting team came and observed classes, met with students, met with teachers, reviewed the self-study, and wrote a report. And Anna Taroni is going to come and present that in October to you with some recommendations. And so I've also been asked to speak at, I don't know if it's MAFLA or some other world language organization at a statewide level at a conference in Springfield on the seal of biliteracy, to talk about our move towards proficiency-based language and not sort of traditional Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, but more of a ensuring that students are able to communicate and make themselves understood and apply the skills instead of knowing the 50 irregular verbs in Espanol. So it's really a sea change for world language, and I think our teachers are incredibly courageous and engaged to try to move this effort forward. So I'm really excited to have you hear about what the visiting team saw when they came and the challenges that still remain. And so that's really the outcome of a curriculum review, is that you engage someone else to help you look at your programs and don't just keep looking internally.
And I think Chris made an important point when he talked about the outcome of the prior curriculum review being everyday math, because I think that's important for us too, because it feeds into our budgetary concerns.
Exactly.
And if there are specific recommendations that are going to come out of these curriculum reviews that are things that we think are important for our kids in our community, then we need to be advocating for them in terms of our budgeting process as well.
That's a great point. Certainly, if you're going to do a hands-on, application-based, sort of authentic learning experience for science or technology, you need to have materials and consumables built into your budget.
Perhaps more prep time for teachers and more collaboration time for programs like that to be able to be really successful as well.
It's easy to run off a worksheet, but it's a lot harder to keep the kits current with everything they need for the students to have just-in-time science. So.
Thank you for the segue, because there is definitely a budget request coming under that. So
Mhm.
right
So-
now, we're just for this year, because it's our second year of, we weren't fully rolled out, so we're rolling out the new standards. So this year, it's just coming under the curriculum supplies budget in my office. But that means less for other things that we do in the district, and it really needs to move to its own category because it's worthy.
And we really want to be providing excellent instruction and materials to our kids, that we need to
Absolutely.
prioritize that.
So I realize there are 3 other goals I know you want to talk about, but I just want to say, I knew there would be some questions and conversation around this one, so I just want to quickly say, Michelle, you and I were totally on the same wavelength, because I've actually noted 3 of these impact FY22. A couple of these impact FY21, but that's actually a ways away. And so in my mind, any report that we're seeing in late September is just fodder for the subsequent fiscal year budget discussion. So Jen, if there's anything that, there's nothing on this list that's FY20 in terms of timing when I see these dates. So that's the.
Science will be.
Science.
Part of science will be, because that's because they're new standards in that area, it's a multi-year rollout. And like I said, we've absorbed last year for the few pilot and this year in the regular, but it will be more by the time they roll out the new standards by next year. So although we won't be done with the whole process Judy was talking about, as we've morphed, there is more hands-on and more science supplies for that. And science budgets were really underfunded in elementary schools prior to this,
So you might remember we did have some money for 7th grade science?
So 7th grade got science books this year. We have, with the other grades, done instead some software that we've also absorbed in the software line. So as we continue to go, because people are trying things, as we continue to go, if people commit to that and it's going to be a standing line in the software line, we're going to need to increase that rather than, again, we use as much open source as we can, but there are some pieces that they're going to, and again, talking about teachers who are brave and willing to try new things. Getting rid of textbooks is a big shift in mindset, and people are trying it out and very happy with what they've done so far, but software is a line item in the budget that is very much typically what we need just to run, like our student management system, or, all of those pieces. So as it's becoming or could becoming more educational kinds of things, like if it's staying in that line, we need to move it there, because again, it just hits, and then we can't fund our normal things. And we
Yeah.
have no seed money then to try some practices for people to pilot a lot of these new ideas we're talking about, so.
So, and we have some target completion dates on some of these. Could I just request that sort of as we go forward, instead of waiting till they're finished, if there are needs that you are anticipating, I realize it might not be the actual dollar amount, but just so that we can start to get our heads around some of the actual budget concerns that might be coming up.
Absolutely.
If you could make some projections for us in those areas, that would be really helpful too.
Sure, I mean, we're happy also to come do a little presentation on the process overall that we're following with things and where we are on the different process and how. I think what's so powerful about the curriculum work, I know we call them reviews because that's typically what they're called in education, but since we don't always already have something already written, we're really building. And what I think would be so powerful about a presentation is letting you see how all these other initiatives really all feed through the curriculum. Because like Judy said, it's really, it's the instruction, it's the assessment, it's the resources, it's all those pieces. And so really all of these initiatives are serviced through the curriculum work. It's also why it takes a long time, but it might be helpful to hear that if you'd like. And that I could also tie in chunks of costs as we go.
That would be great.
So Judy, why don't you jump on 4, and then we'll circle back and open it up for questions on these.
Sure.
There are
So
others.
the fourth goal has to do with making sure that we're supportive, inclusive, and welcoming for students and families of all races, colors, religions, etc. And there were some suggestions that have not yet been incorporated into the kind of action steps under this goal. And the first action step is around having a purposeful goal to recruit more diverse staff members, and the ways we're going to do that. I think that at our joint discussion, someone suggested it's not just about diverse staff members, but attracting staff members who are committed to diversity and committed to supporting and inclusive practices. And so I think I will put that in there. But I think both pieces are important, because as I visited elementary schools today, I was at Lynch and I was at Lincoln, and earlier, last week, and yesterday I've been at the other schools, and we have an incredibly diverse student body, and we don't have incredibly diverse teachers and support staff members. And time and again, you read very good research that says students of color should see teachers of color, and that's just we struggle with trying to attract and retain as much diversity on our staff as we'd like, and so we need to really double down on that, I think, in addition to being sure that everyone we hire respects all kinds of diversity, including diversity that you can't see just by looking at what someone's face looks like. So so that I will revise that with that wording in mind. So are there any questions on number 4?
So you're going to revise it after we vote?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to include the phrase attract and retain more diverse staff members and staff members who've demonstrated commitment to inclusive practices or diversity, something like that. Just
Inclusive practices is a great
yeah,
way.
just a little tweak there to broaden it a bit.
And just to be clear, so I mean, this is even what we have in our book is an expansion of what we saw, a few weeks ago. And bullet 3, you've also made some changes to from the very first version that we saw, based on some feedback.
Right, and so the other piece from the last bullet talks about being sure that not only are our instructional materials diverse, but also that they're written or created by people of diverse racial, religious, ethnic, or other identities. And so global authors, not just dead white males. I was a former English teacher, so I can say that. So any questions on that goal? New goals for 18-19, these are pretty similar. Our 2 biggest, most time-consuming, non-sort of educational pieces this year will be making sure that we have enough resources to do our jobs. And so that's going to require most likely an operational override. And so that's really what we've been working on in Goal 5, making a case for it, making sure that we can project staffing and expense scenarios under a variety of appropriate and less than appropriate funding levels. And then number 6 is to look at all of our major building needs, the McCall Phase 2, finish out Phase 1, MSBA partnership on, we hope, fingers crossed, Lynch, looking at installing an elevator here so we can make this space available as we need to expand, and perhaps eventually relocate central office. So, any questions on those last two?
Well, just a quick comment, I think that you added support planning for central office relocation, which I think makes sense. If we're gonna get the elevator project done, then it's time to have that sort of logistics kind of thought through, so.
Right.
Good. It's good.
So,
I think Brian had
go ahead, Brian.
Came out of our, I don't know what we want to call that meeting when we met.
The joint meeting?
Joint meeting, yes. At least someone said, and I really liked the idea of having, I know this is a top level document, but even a higher level document that you just look at and you say, these are the goals. We're wellness, supporting our learners, curriculum review, school culture, sustainable finances, supporting our buildings. So while that doesn't impact this, I'd love to see that sort of, something like that.
Like
I
a
know
gra-
it
a
pushed
graphic,
out,
a gra-
graphic.
a graphic
Did you mean pushed out
exercise.
publicly, Brian?
Yeah.
I mean, not just, well, publicly and privately everywhere, just so that
Yeah.
you can look at it and just say, these are the goals and the improvements that we're looking for this year, and not have to sort of understand, we need to understand it, but someone else who's looking at it doesn't necessarily want to have to understand everything. They want to see what the top level is.
So I've been thinking about that since we had that conversation, because it's I think it's easy to sort of have something that looks like slogans instead of something that is connected. So we do have a leadership team meeting this week, and I thought I'd discuss it and see if there's someone on the team who has some ideas. But I think it's also important to go back to the pillars that we have and look at the connection between those and the goals. And if I can draw some of those together, that might be a good way to visually represent. This is a very text-dense kind of presentation of goals. So, well, I'll continue to work on that.
And that doesn't impact this. In my
Yeah.
mind, it's a separate thing, but I think they are related.
Yeah.
And we want those to be, a living document as well, and I think that a lot of those themes and beacons are reflected in here, but it would be good to make that more explicit.
Yeah.
Michelle or Zena, any questions or comments? So I just had a couple under goal number 1. I'm just looking at the date under the district wellness action
Yep.
plan.
Yep.
So I just want to underscore. So if something's coming in September of 19, it's actually, that really means it's impacting FY 21 because 19 is already FY 20. And so certainly, I guess I would expect that we're going to get feedback in the budgeting process. Help me understand, most of these dates are all September dates. Is that just a reflection that, we're sort of busy wrapping up the school year and then summer things get slow generally, but a lot of things are happening here? So is this kind of the quiet time to get to the finish line on some of these major exercises? I mean, sort of give me an idea, what happens on something like this during the summer? It seems to me you're free of some distractions, but on the other hand, people sometimes are scarce.
So the reason I've got completion dates in September is to allow for summer work.
Okay.
For teachers to come together and meet, so we would pay teachers to write and revise curriculum or to review, to participate in the self-study. And so for the world language curriculum review, I met with Anna and I chaired that, and so we met in the summer pretty regularly to do a lot of the work because we could get the teachers
Okay.
to have availability. So when I say the September completion date, then it's presented to school committee in October, November in preparation for the next budget year. The January dates are sort of hard and dates because I think I would like to have recommendations, particularly for 6 through 12 wellness, if we're going to purchase materials in next year's budget or hire staff. We've already had one presentation by the high school, and I've asked for a pause on that so we can look at middle school wellness and see how that relates to it, and I'm hopeful that that will be done in time to put a request in for the FY20 budget. So that's why it says January. January's the hard, it's really December, but the curriculum doesn't have to be done but the choice of the cost has to be done before the budget is presented to you in January, I guess.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned the January, because the one I circled down below was health, wellness, and guidance, target completion of January of 20, and we're voting a budget in January. So basically,
Right.
it's not like we're going to get hit with a presentation right before we do a
No.
vote. You'll be informing us in that process. Okay, so thank you, Judy. I appreciate sort of the thoughtfulness as this has been tweaked a few times. So is there a motion on the district goals and improvement plan as presented, one that might include Judy's note about some additional language under goal number 4 for attracting and retaining staff members?
Vote to approve the 2018-2019 district goals and improvement plan as amended to include additional wording on goal 4 about not only diverse staff members, but staff members open to diversity in the language.
Inclusive practices.
Inclusive practices.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, Judy. Okay, so the next item we have under action items is the vote to approve to use a consent agenda. So we'll come back to superintendent goals here in just a moment. Let me just find it in our book.
12.
I know Judy's already on it. Thank you very much. Okay, so just a quick summary. So Robert's Rules of Order recognizes the consent agenda as a tool that public bodies can use to sort of expedite some decision-making on certain types of items if it's so warranted. And so we thought we would try that certainly tonight, given like a second read on policies. We have a number of gifts, for instance. And so this was a suggestion that you see in the agenda. So because Robert's Rules recognizes this as a tool, it doesn't require a policy change. It does, however, require that we approve a rule, which is actually presented on page 12 under background information. So this is actually the motion I'd be looking for. I mean, we could literally say what is under background information would be the rule. And if that is voted tonight, then we will take up a discussion about any items on the consent agenda that members may want to pull out. So let me just very quickly summarize, since this is sort of a not insignificant change in the way we sort of do our work. So consent agenda can only work if the reports and other matters for the meeting are known in advance and distributed with the package, and they have been. So that members can see them prior to the meeting. A typical procedure is when preparing the agenda, the chair will determine if the item belongs on consent. Again, we've talked, I think, before as a group about some of the kind of the repetitive things that we might want to dispatch in that way. The consent agenda, of course, lists the items. And at the beginning of the meeting, we didn't do this tonight because we don't yet have the rule, but if it's voted tonight, what we will do moving forward is when we've got a consent agenda, the chair will ask members what items they wish to be removed and discussed individually. So I just want to be clear, that can be for any reason. You have a question, you have a comment, there may be someone in the audience who wishes to speak to something that's been arranged with the chair or superintendent. That would also be fine. If any member requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, it is removed. We're not voting it. It can be removed for any reason, as I said. And once it's been removed, the chair can decide whether to take it up immediately or place it on the regular meeting agenda. We'll have to see kind of moving forward what feels right. My sense is anything that members want to pull off the consent agenda, we may pick up just following a vote on the actual consent agenda. So when there are no more meetings to be removed, no more items to be removed, the chair reads out the numbers of the remaining consent items, and the chair then states, if there is no objection, these items will be adopted. And after pausing for any objections, the chair states, as there are no objections, these items are adopted. It is not necessary for a roll call vote or a show of hands. And then when preparing the minutes, Frida will include the full text of the resolutions, reports, or recommendations that were adopted. So that, I think, is the important part of the consent rule. So I should open up to see if anybody has any questions or comments or concerns about this, and if none, I'd be happy to get a motion on adopting a consent agenda rule.
That's just a very specific question to this particular meeting.
This meeting,
which is
yes.
usually you said at the beginning of the meeting you would request which ones come out of consent agenda. For tonight's meeting, would you like that immediately following this, or would you like that to take place when you go to pull up the consent
I'm
agenda.
going to ask that for this meeting, we do it when we come back to the consent agenda, since our district goals are so fresh in our mind. I think I actually want to get back to the superintendent's goals, if that's okay.
Okay.
And we get that out of the way, then we
Perfect.
come back, and then it won't be clumsy anymore.
Perfect.
Any other questions or thoughts? Seeing none, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that a consent agenda may be presented by the chair at the beginning of a meeting. Items may be removed from the consent agenda on the request of any one member. Items may not be removed. Items not removed may be adopted by general consent without debate. Removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the chair.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. So that takes care of our 2 action items under section 6. So Judy, I'd like to come back to section 5.
Sure.
Superintendent goals. These are not for vote tonight, but an initial pass under reports and discussion.
So my goals are in your packet on page 7. Yep. So a couple of things about goals that I think are worth mentioning. That in the state, all public educators follow an evaluation process, and that includes goal development. And so a couple of things to note about the evaluation process. The superintendent, except for discussion in public about my deficiencies and strengths, my evaluation process is very similar to that used for principals. Every certified, every licensed staff member has a similar evaluation process. Teachers, principals, I evaluate all the principals and central office members. Principals evaluate all the folks in their buildings. There are some other cross-building folks who other central office staff members evaluate. It all starts with sort of a self-assessment, goal setting, and then a formative or summative assessment depending on what year you are employed. So this is the piece of goal setting that is very similar to what the teachers are doing in terms of setting what's called a professional practice goal and a student learning goal. Professional practice goal is about improving my skills. The student learning goal is about helping students achieve at higher levels or meeting some other student need. In addition, for superintendents, I've also included some district improvement goals that I'm going to directly support in my goals. The state has recently released new rubrics for teachers and principals, which are more specific in some of the indicators, and they are going to at some point release new superintendent rubrics. They're pretty similar in that there are still 4 kind of categories, standards around curriculum instruction, assessment, parent and community relations, and professional responsibilities. And so I think that I would just remind you that in the end, you'll be writing my evaluation based on how well I perform against the rubric, which shows levels from exemplary to not doing so well. And so, so that's just part of the process. So the goals that I've set forward here don't include everything I'm going to do this year, but just some, pulled out some highlights. The first goal is around, I think, one of the most important human resource functions, which is building a strong and effective district leadership team. Right now, there are 13 members of the district leadership team. It includes all the central office folks and the 7 principals. Several of them are new to their roles. So some of the key actions include making sure that they have sufficient support and mentoring to be very effective. We've got one principal who is an interim principal, for example, one assistant principal who's an interim assistant principal, making sure that everyone who's part of the team is supported. And also that the more veteran members of the team are pushed, gently nudged to take on additional responsibilities so that we can distribute the leadership throughout the district and gain additional skills. And we have a 35-member all-evaluator team. So taking the lead on that effort to be sure that all the evaluators, and that includes directors, assistant principals, central office folks, meet once a month and engage together in professional development is a really important part of what we do. and using the new revised school level administrator rubric as part of focused evaluation is another key action. So I'll pause there. So some of this is about improving my ability to work with our team and make sure that their needs are met.
So Judy, would you care to go through all of these, or do you want to kind of hit each one, pause, and take questions and feedback
Yeah, why
as
don't
you go?
why don't we pause as we go, in case people have some suggestions? There are some people who submitted questions, which I thought were really good and helpful, and so if you want to bring those up tonight, if you think it'll be helpful for the rest of the group to hear them.
Who wishes to go?
I was gonna, just because we might not all be familiar, what is the work that you're doing around the power of positive leadership?
So we all read a book by John Gordon called The Power of Positive Leadership, and it really is making sure that leaders are connecting to school cultures in ways that support positive growth and are able to address conflict in a way without getting demoralized or something in the book that was called the energy vampires. It's easy to get the energy vampires sucking the life out of you, whether those are unhappy community members, parents, students, or faculty members. So we talked a lot about making sure that we understood the impact that we have as leaders on the people we work with, and nurturing, reducing stress and anxiety, being encouraging, being supportive. Holding people to high standards doesn't mean making everyone fearful all the time for their jobs. And so, particularly in the era of increasing accountability without increasing resources, we want to make sure that we are positive leaders, and that students feel that every interaction we have with them is positive as well. It trickles all the way down to the students. So I have a copy of the book if anyone wants to borrow it. Actually, Frida, when I ordered them, saw it and was interested, and she read it too, and so I thought that was interesting.
I read it this summer too.
You read it this summer too?
So you guys are reading it.
Oh, good.
I have a copy too. Did you read it too?
No, I would like to.
So I actually think.
Come on, it's not a book club. What's next?
I actually think
Should be.
I actually think that there's a book
Everything
called The Power of Positive Teams that the same gentleman wrote, and also The Energy Bus. If you've ever read The Energy Bus, which is a very interesting kind of allegory, it's a really good. It's got a lot of sports metaphors in there, which are kind of interesting. A lot of teams, professional teams, have found to benefit from the power of positive leadership or positive teams.
Any other comments on goal 1? I have one.
Okay.
So just, it's a question under, you used the expression a moment ago, empower leadership throughout the district. And when I look at, I think it's, yes, third bullet, empower the growth and development of team members by asking them to take on district-wide, I'm assuming we mean leadership team, to take on district-wide leadership of study teams and provide professional development. So when I just think about our collective sense that we're all trying to do so much with limited time and resources, and I think about some of that feedback we got even a year ago when we had our dinner with leadership team. I'm imagining if I'm on the leadership team and the superintendent asks me, can I also, by the way, pick up a district-wide leadership of a study team? Like, my first thought's going to be, I'm either looking to reprioritize, or can I just delegate something else I'm doing to somebody else? And when you talk about 35 evaluators, that's nearly 3 times the members of the leadership team. So can you talk about how that third bullet, is it not just taking on a role among the leadership team taking on something new, but is this also about them delegating something to others, so others are owning something that's district-wide, or we're just sort of asking people to do more?
Right. So I think that especially as principals become more comfortable in their roles and have done it for a number of years, what you want to do is empower them someday to become superintendents. And the only way to get ready for that jump to central office is to take on some district-wide leadership effort that's going to stretch you a little bit. And so it's easy for Jen or for me, or even for Lori or Ellen or Jason to take on every initiative that comes along. But what we'd like to do is sort of distribute some of that leadership and ask for all of the members of the all evaluation team to do professional development. I'm offering, for example, on the half day, a workshop, district-wide workshop on how to be a great professional learning community team, or what are the characteristics of a great team. And I'm trying to model that. I don't know if anyone will sign up for that or show up for the session, but all of the members of the evaluation team, which includes, again, directors and assistant principals and principals, are expected to share their expertise in some way and to model for teachers that we're all learners, and sometimes we even can teach something that we don't know well, but we're willing to learn beside you. And so we think that's a really important part of the growth and development of the leadership team members. I wouldn't ask folks who are taking on new roles to take a leadership role on this, but for example, we're doing a study group, the MCIA study group, this year around what's going to be a data dashboard that is reflective of student and teacher surveys and some other data points to look at how well we're meeting benchmark against the measures set by the larger group. Some principals, some teachers, and some central office administrators have volunteered to serve on that study group. And so that is a district-wide, I consider that a district-wide study group. Some may lead it in the future, but some may just participate. And so it stretches them. Some served on the calendar study committee, some served on the school start time committee. I'm trying to get people ready to actually lead those committees and to take on an issue where we don't know the answer when we start asking the questions and have them grow. So it's always a sense of balance. Who has time to do it, who has an interest, who's ready to stretch. And I try to push people hard. You know, Ellen's taking a grad course right now that I encouraged her to take. I expect other members of the leadership team to enter doctoral studies at some point. It just seems like the next natural step for them. So my role is to gently nudge and not nudge them over the cliff.
And Judy, can I also add too that we don't have a particularly deep administrative team in this district. So in a lot of districts you would move on from being a veteran teacher or a veteran administrator into something at the central office. So is this also offering opportunities that maybe these staff members would have had in other districts that to
growth.
expand growth here?
So one of the things that Pam Court talked about at the beginning of the meeting was how we have a very skilled middle school teacher who's now taking on the role of the K-12 service learning coordinator. And I think that is a great opportunity for her, but also works, you know, the people like Catherine Dwyer and Katie Malone, who are on the All of L team, but are just one step removed from the classroom, have taken on really challenging roles that require a lot of initiative. So for Anne-Marie Tan to be successful as a service learning coordinator, she has to go out and meet the folks at the Jenks Center and a variety of other community organizations and be very much a self-starter. And that's a tremendous growth opportunity for someone. So, yeah.
Thank you. So, next.
Next, student learning goals. So these are some of the steps that I pulled out of district goals that are sort of my passion that I'm going to sort of take on individually, which is the multi-age, multi-grade looping kind of alternatives for next year. I'm really going to push the elementary principals on that and see if we can get, you know, I hope at least a couple of these rolling. The second one is district curriculum accommodation plan. So this is all in support of the meeting the needs of individual learners. So the district curriculum accommodation plan is something every district is required to use. It's really regular ed strategies to meet the needs of individual learners, and it gives lots of different ways for teachers to access that. We have kind of an outdated one that could be more useful, that might help people see that there are pathways to meet individual needs without going on an IEP. And so it is okay to not have whole class instruction. It is okay to give students additional time. You know, there's lots of things suggestions on the district curriculum accommodation plan that I don't know that we publicize enough and talk about. So I'm going to try to work on beefing that up and making sure that teachers all use it as appropriate depending on their level. And finally, performance-based assessments, which are part of our MCIA work, but also district-wide. Jen has gone above and beyond the MCIA work and offered district-wide PD on that issue, and it's been extremely well received.
Feedback on student goal 1? Go ahead.
Questions, sort of comments on the first key action.
Yep.
Just up front, are you looking at K to 12 or are you looking at elementary level? What are you thinking of there?
K to 5.
Okay.
And probably not K, although it could be a K1 class. I really want to go out and talk with teachers and say, what have we used in the past that we no longer use that might better meet the needs of individual students? And 3 that I can think of are multi-age, multi-grade, or looping classrooms, but there may be others. But it takes a lot of sort of planning to see whether parents are going to be supportive of this. The beauty of moving at the high school to a proficiency-based language program is that it's no longer a grade-specific program, it's a proficiency-based. So students who really excel can accelerate through, and students who need extra time can slow down. And really that's what it should be about. We've been on the sort of factory conveyor belt model of education for too long, where if you're 6, you're here, and if you're 7, you're here. And it really should be about who are you as a learner, what do you need, and how can we meet your needs as an individual. The reality is we've got to be efficient in our use of how we organize students, but I think we're really rigid. And so I'd like to try to expand a little bit and be a little less rigid then.
Is looping where the teacher follows the student through the grades?
Right. So the one place where something like looping or teaming could apply at the high school is sometimes they have freshman academies where teachers share the same students, or you might have the same English teacher 2 years in a row to sort of get a jump start on what you started working on last year. You already know your students. I think it was beautiful that Mr. Costello tonight said, we've had these students since 4th grade. We all know them intimately because they are our music students. And so there are lots of times where students will have a teacher for 1 semester and never see that teacher again, which I think is a shame. So I'd like to open the discussion of middle and high school around that, but really what I'm thinking is at the elementary level, could there be some teachers who have a 3rd grade class this year and would keep most of those same kids for 4th grade next year and get a jump start? And it takes a special kind of person to do that, who's willing to sort of learn in depth 2 years of curriculum and wants to stay with those same students. But the research shows that those students have a 3 to 4 month advantage in terms of learning because they've got all the routines down, they know each other, for good or bad, they know the teacher, they know our expectations or his expectations. So
I want to give a shout out to Lynch because they did that with a special education teacher who started last year in 2nd grade and moved up to 3rd grade this year. That was a fantastic thing. It really brought comfort to the students.
And I think it's a lot more work for the teachers to do it at first, but once you've done it a couple of times, you kind of have it down. Yeah. So
Could we call them innovative structures instead of alternative? Alternative makes it sound like a...
yeah, innovative. Yeah.
More alternative or innovative than it is. It sounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything would be
Innovative is good, yeah.
more innovative than what we're doing, which
And
is
it allows us to look beyond that, maybe even the 3
Right.
that you've had listed
Right.
here as well.
Right.
Maybe some of the teachers have suggestions that would...
exactly.
So Judy, I had one comment on this, but two-part comment. So under key actions, and I was thinking of this when we were talking about district goals, I keep thinking about co-teaching, which we've talked about before. Co-teaching's not really on the district goals. We kind of felt like that was a little too granular.
Yep.
But that was a big change for us, certainly a change in an instructional strategy. It has budget implications, and Jen has shared with us the data show that that's actually been very successful. So it's not so much a new thing because we've been doing it, but when we've talked about co-teaching in the past, we've talked about continuing to evaluate its effectiveness. Where else should we be doing it? And we're doing a lot of it at elementary. I think we all recognize that at the high school level, once you get beyond sophomore year, the course pathways just become so, I'll say fragmented, that's not the right word, but they're so individual paths. I don't think anybody around this table expects we could ever afford, nor would it necessarily be appropriate to co-teach every class, right, in every classroom at the high school. But I'd like to be sure co-teaching stays on our radar because if it needs to be expanded, pushed up, pushed down. I think, Judy, was it last year or is it this year where we have co-teaching in Spanish at the high school? We're doing it in one language, right?
2. No, we
2?
have it in Spanish. We had it last year in Italian and Spanish.
It's only carried on to Italian.
Now it's only carried on in Italian.
No, in Italian
Spanish.
to the second year, but it will
Okay.
just be Spanish going forward.
Just be Spanish.
So, like,
because
we-
it's too difficult to.
Right.
It's one of those things that you have very few sections of Italian. compared
Right.
to Spanish.
So, I mean, we haven't talked about co-teaching in the world language realm, but it's important for me to be sure that that stays on our radar somehow. And then I think the flip side to that coin, though, too, Judy, is when we pivoted to co-teaching, one of the questions was, so then what happens to the Learning Center? And that was kind of an open question. And we've got enough experience with co-teaching now that I'd like to challenge, because I'm looking at the goal, support instruction that meets the needs. So is Learning Center really meeting the needs of some students who are in it? For some students, it is kind of just an open study hall. For
That's a
some,
good,
right?
You have
Is
a
that-
lot of
is that
loaded
not right?
questions here.
I know,
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
opening up a lot, but, you know, is that time for those kids the most effective way for them to spend their time? Should it be something else? And I think, I just want to put it back out there, especially for some of our newer school committee members, that when we made that shift to co-teaching, we understood why we were doing it, why it was the right thing to do. There was a lot of support for it and how it was going to change what happened in the classroom. But in shifting to co-teaching and now bringing that special education teacher as the partner, it fundamentally changes who's even in the Learning Center to begin with. And then that kind of interaction with the students in the classroom, I think there was some expectation might actually change what the student, the value of a Learning Center, whatever that might become.
Right. So I guess what I would say is a couple of things about this, because I think.
Pam's happy she's not here tonight with everything I just said. Because a lot of that would go to Pam.
Overlaps with
I was going to
special
say, I
education.
think, I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you.
no, go
I
ahead.
think, Chris, though, your question isn't about co-teaching necessarily, specifically from what I'm hearing. It sounds like it's a bigger question about special education.
Well, no, I mentioned it.
Because when you bring the Learning Center into co-teaching is in of itself an innovative learning structure, as I see it. But when you start talking about the Learning Center and how the Learning Center is meeting the needs of individual students, then we're talking about looking at how special education is serving students' needs, not just, because co-teaching is just, like the Specialized Learning Center is one part of special education. The co-teaching is another part of special education. So your question feels broader than just adding co-teaching into me. I don't know, how do you?
Well, so let me just clarify. I mention it because I look at multi-age, multi-grade looping,
Right.
and so yes, co-teaching is sort of this.
Fits
It was
in
an.
that.
It fits in that. That's
In
right.
that, but Learning Center is, you're starting to talk about evaluating the whole special ed program.
So again, what I'm saying, I'm challenging Judy just to say, when we made that change, we recognized Learning Center would, what Learning Center is would change.
Right.
And we didn't know at the time what that would be like. We didn't know at the time if Learning Center would even be necessary in the way it had been. When we didn't have co-teaching, we had that foundational level. And there was sort of this implicit understanding we would come back to that when we learned more. So we're learning a lot about the effectiveness of co-teaching, which I love. Michelle, whether it fits specifically under this goal or some other place, I guess I want to be sure I'm throwing it out there that we don't lose it. I think LC is changing over time. But Judy, I want to give you a moment to respond.
So just a couple of thoughts. So the only reason to be on an IEP is if you need specialized instruction. If you're in a learning center and you're just getting homework help, that's not specialized instruction. And so the structure of the way high schools have worked is that they've had learning centers to support students' regular classroom achievement, generally, by providing learning center support. But if you have a co-teacher, that replaces the need for some of the supports of a learning center. So Chris is right. Over time, if we have more co-teaching, we should decrease the need for so many learning centers or so many students going to learning centers so frequently. Because really, that's not what an IEP is for. It's not to have a learning center support. Some students in learning center are learning executive functioning, and that is specialized instruction. So every student on an IEP has different needs and has different reasons for being in a learning center or being in a co-taught class. The one caution I would offer is that evaluating the effectiveness of co-teaching doesn't mean that we're not going to do co-teaching anymore because some people don't think it's effective. It's been proven to be effective. It's a new model to Winchester. It's not a new model. It's just another method of delivery. And it does come with significant cost because of the intensive nature of the personnel involved. The other thing I would say is that this is not an exhaustive list of everything that's a priority. And so, of necessity, because we have kids with IEPs with services written into them, whether there'll be learning centers or how many co-teaching sections will be dictated by the needs of the students and their teams as they develop their IEPs every year. And so Jen has been closer to the co-teaching issue than anyone, and that discussion will absolutely 100% continue. And the way we organize learning centers is changing. It's changed already at the elementary level, where we're having fewer special ed teachers having pull out and more push in. And when I go into classrooms, because we have so many teachers, I don't know all the teachers yet specifically and what their roles are. And you often go in, you can't tell who's the teacher and who's the special ed teacher. So it's a seamless kind of thing. So if you wanted to put an action step here around continuing to support co-teaching, I would do that. It's something I'm going to do anyway. It's not above and beyond. Not a focus area for me, but certainly a focus area for the whole team as we continue to look at, what the students' needs are. And that will be what drives expansion up or down, and how we change Learning Center. Jen, you want to jump in? Because you've been really close to this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure which piece you're looking for. Two things, I guess. I think there were two kinds of parallel discussions going about this. One, so looking at expanding, so for the first time we are doing some official co-teaching with EL and reading, particularly at the elementary level as part of our expansion with co-teaching.
So not necessarily special ed, but support services.
Right, so again, the services, right, following the kids versus,
Right, because
distributing
co-teaching is not
kids.
an accommodation.
Correct.
It's an instructional one.
Exactly.
We sometimes have to remind ourselves of that.
Exactly.
Right.
As we start every single workshop with reading the definition to people again about driving home that it's an instructional model. That's the one piece. The piece about the Learning Center piece, which I think does kind of parallel with that. So there has been a very natural, so we're talking a lot about natural next steps lately. So there has been a very natural evolution at the elementary level that it has drastically reduced resource room time or learning center time or any of those pieces, except for, and even with our substantially separate programs, but more so with our general populace of special education students. Where we haven't seen the progression as much, and Pam and I were actually in a meeting about this today, is at the secondary level. So that's still where our discussions need to come. And I'm not sure if it's a chicken egg thing, if it's parents, if it's the school, if it's a combination of, I feel like the students need this or my child needs this. And so, and to your point, it is absolutely sometimes just a supervised homework center, which frankly, so are study halls in the middle school. So it's not necessarily, it's not that we want to pull away supports, but two important things happen if we continue down that path of the prescription of every kid gets learning center. One, the teachers have less time to be in classrooms with the students where they do generalize their learning. And two, students miss something at the middle school if they do that. So by putting them in that class, we are excluding them, and typically from their specials, which I am loath to do. It is part of what makes them happy about going to school and following that passion, which we say is our mission. So we were just, actually, today's was about reading, but Pam and I were in the meeting about reading workshop and that not taking the place of their specials. How do we get those services to students without compromising what we think is best for the whole child?
Thank you.
I just add something in there? I think rather than call out co-teaching, if there was going to be a goal in there, I would rather see a goal that was something around review and revise district-wide inclusive practices to make sure that we are continuing to follow the needs of the students.
Okay.
Well, you can take some time to wordsmith and do it.
Yeah.
Let me see where I fit,
But I
where
would
we can
think
fit that. That might fit under.
something broader around inclusive district-wide inclusion and inclusive practices, because I feel like we're moving that way.
Right, so I just want to remind you that with my goals, I go mid-year for you and say, here's where I've made progress, here's where I think we were too aggressive and I haven't been able to get to this and probably won't. Some of these are going to be multi-year goals. So, moving on to district improvement goals.
Brian,
Circle back,
Brian,
because I had asked a
Brian.
question and then somehow it went a different direction. I just wanted to ask,
sorry.
follow up on the, whether it was K to 12 or K to 5 you were looking at. And then I had a question based on that.
Follow-up, okay.
Which was the multi-grade levels, as you're aware, have taken place in town. I don't think there are any multi-grade levels, or at least.
At the elementary level?
The elementary
Not
level.
There haven't been any
There
since
haven't
I've been
any
here.
s- There were
Not in 4 years.
a number of years ago.
Many years ago.
But something you mentioned that I just wanted to make sure is that in addition to review and research, that's something that also requires, I believe, substantial parental buy-in to that kind of model. I don't know, I was on the outside looking in. I think there may have been some parental pressure to the elimination of some of those programs. So, again, I was on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
But it's just something to keep in mind that when you tell a student, this student's going to be going into a K-1 program, and your child's going to be going into just a K program, that they're the same but they're different. It caused some issues at the time, again, as a parent from the outside. So I think that the multi-grade level, especially at the elementary level, requires substantial buy-in from parents to show that it's better. And if it's better, then the next question is, why doesn't everybody get it?
So can I just jump in? To me, it's not about it being better. Go back and look at the goal. What meets the needs of individual learners? So from my point of view, at that time, in a number of our schools, we had it at Morocco, we had it at Lincoln. I don't know if we had it in all 5 elementary schools. We had it in 2, maybe 3. Susan was like deep into being an elementary parent at that time. That's why I'm looking at you. But we had some teachers who were willing to take it on. We had a superintendent and a school committee that was supportive. If you want to do that, fine. And so it wasn't really in sort of an edict that this is, in other words, in every school you had multi-grade, multi-age, but you also had a traditional K1, 2, 3. So it avoided that issue where parents felt the pressure. My sense was the buy-in wasn't as big of a deal because you could choose your path. But the reason it went away was those teachers who had really been behind it, frankly, just retired. And those who were sort of hired by the district wasn't what they were familiar with when they were student teachers. They hadn't been in that environment. And so I just think as a district, it wasn't something we were making a big job of supporting. The last multi-age classroom was at Lincoln, and it was the year we voted I think like 2011, which wasn't that long ago, but that was the last sort of holdout.
7 years?
Yeah.
Everyone's gone through all of their whole elementary experience in that time.
Yeah. That's right.
So,
That's
anyway.
right.
So it would be brand new.
So it would be brand new. And I'm not suggesting that we would even recommend for necessarily implementation in 1920 if people were not ready for it. But we should at least look at it and see what people are doing out there.
Sure.
So, next one is pretty straightforward. This is around school schedules. We sort of had a false start on that. We've had some change in personnel. Now it's time to sort of take another look, particularly I'm thinking middle and high school schedules, particularly looking at how we do the specials at the elementary level, and whether we want to make recommendations for improvement. Obviously, we'll look at the Later Start initiative and homework and grading practices we've spoken about. So those are sort of my big 3.
I had a question that I think I sent you about reviewing the start time initiative, just being cognizant of the fact that at the elementary level, it's an earlier start time, and we would
Later
wanna-
and earlier.
Yeah. You would want
Right.
to assess the impact of that as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Presume.
So just the start time initiative.
Start time initiative, right. Yeah. Okay, the next district improvement goal is around diversity and inclusion. So I think we've talked about those. A lot of those were drawn straight from the district goals. That might be a place to put on inclusive practices.
Can I also ask, would it be fruitful to have a goal around ensuring diverse hiring committees? Or is that so dependent on what the hiring is actually?
It depends on the building. So the hiring committee, so this is an interesting question because one of the things we're wrestling with MCIEA is we're not very diverse in our leadership group. And so, but we're really struggling with how to diversify it because you've sort of set the table. It's union presidents and superintendents make up the governing board, and they happen to be whatever they happen to be of the districts who are members. And so trying to diversify gets difficult. So hiring committees is the same thing. You know, that's yeah. District
And I assume whatever we change in the other one, you'll just parallel.
Yeah. District Improvement Goal 3 is around building projects, and we've talked about that. And District Improvement Goal 4 is around what my role is in supporting the operational override or sufficient budget.
Yep, using the word financial and, we got into that.
Yeah, I think you gave me, participate in the, I think you gave me a correction of that one that I'll make for the next draft.
And my suggestion on District Goal 3, just to be consistent with the district goals, is maybe use the word support instead of lead. I mean, you obviously have a very key role on the EFPBC, Judy.
Yeah.
Action items all make a lot of sense.
Okay.
All right. So unless there are other questions or comments, so Judy, your plan is you'll think
Revise
through
this
this,
for the
make a
next
couple of revisions, and then maybe have this in the packet the next meeting for action?
Yep.
Okay. So thank you for that.
Sure.
So now we're going to move out of reports and discussion and come back to actually our consent agenda. So let me go back here. I'm going to open it up to members who would like, for any reason, to remove an item from the consent agenda. Of course, we've already acted on the overnight trip, which was item I. So we have a couple of items. We have a vote to appoint superintendent to the SEAM Collaborative Board, vote to approve a grant from the SEAM Collaborative. We have a number of gifts and grants from some foundations. We have 2 minutes in the packet. I'm actually going, myself, I'll say I want to pull out the July 24th, only so Judy or Susan can share with everybody. There were.
Ask you how we're going to
Yeah,
deal with
so
minutes.
Susan had some suggestions that Judy's looked at. They've made a change, so it just gives us the time to review that. So we could pull out July 24th. We have that second look at policies that we discussed at the last meeting.
So can I jump in?
Please,
So,
yeah.
The policy JFABE, I actually got feedback from the DESC on this policy. They saw it was on our agenda, so they had asked that we make one small adjustment. So can we pull it out of consent and just make that one adjustment? And they're going to send it to MASC and suggest that they want a policy change.
You said that's JFABE?
The military, educational opportunities for military children and children in foster.
So are you suggesting the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is reading our
reading our
agendas
agendas.
on the Winchester? That's
That's pretty
it's
impressive.
very impressive.
It's impressive and maybe a little sinister.
Someone who lives in Winchester who's high up in the DESC
Yes,
who
yes,
happened to see
yes.
we were
That's
doing it.
right, yeah.
Sent it to review with someone else in DESC, and they just, while I was at this meeting, sent me a suggestion for revision.
Yes, so we have several actually
We're
at DC
happy
who
to
live here, so we're
accommodate.
pleased to have them. Thank you for their oversight. Members, is there anything else folks would like to pull out of the consent agenda?
Yes, I would like to pull out both A and B.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so let me review. So what we have in the consent agenda tonight, we have C, D, E, F, G, H. We've already acted on I. For J, we've pulled out the minutes of the 24th. We still have the minutes of the 11th. We have K, and we still have L. As Judy says, we're going to pull out J, F, A, B, E at DC's suggestion. So that's the summary. If there is no objection, these items will be adopted. Seeing none, these items are adopted. That worked. That's a big deal. Okay, so let's circle back then, and we can kind of work, I'd like to work our way from kind of top to bottom, if that pleases everyone. So we have a vote to appoint Judy to the SEAM Collaborative Board. Judy, could you speak to this and maybe take an opportunity to put in a plug for the SEAM Collaborative for those who are
Sure.
watching?
So the SEAM Collaborative is our special education collaborative group, yes.
What does SEAM stand for? Does
Oh,
anyone know?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Okay.
I don't know if it stands for.
Someday.
It does.
Special education.
education.
I was gonna say, I can Google.
You can Google
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
I've never been asked
should've-
that question.
just occurred
good
to
to
me.
know.
It's a long-standing collaborative.
Even toured them and I don't know.
It tells you how used to you just get to acronyms and never even
Acronyms.
think about it.
Mhm.
I just never even.
It's like Dunkin' Donuts now going to Dunkin'. Someday, nobody will ask, but that's what they're doing.
It anyway.
That's true. They won't. And
So-
they'll start
I wonder
spelling
if it had to do with the first
Dunkin', like
school.
Dunkin' Pike.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that just derailed everything. I'm sorry.
Keep talking.
There goes the consent agenda.
There goes the
So
whole consent
Susan was
agenda.
shocked to learn that Dunkin' Donuts is going to drop the donuts and just become Dunkin'.
They're still gonna sell the donuts though, right?
I don't know about that piece.
Domino's still sells the pizza.
Yeah.
It's all marketing.
There you go.
It's because Dunkin' Donuts is too long in this day and age, you know, for online readers, you know.
Could be.
You can only
Could be in this
process
day
so
and
much.
age. So this,
Same.
every district belongs to one or more special education collaboratives. The purpose of the collaborative is to provide services that you can not easily provide within district. Primarily, they run a number of different special education programs for low incidence, high cost students. They also do 45-day educational assessments. They provide home-based services. They partner with us on a number of grants, and they do professional development. And so the state had changed the rules for collaborative leadership a few years ago and kind of tightened up on those rules. Some collaboratives have both school committee members and superintendents on the board. SEAM happens to be one that just has superintendents making up the board. Recently, I was elected to chair this board, and we meet generally monthly, and we get a review and vote on financial reports for the programs that they run, set fees, and do a budget for the following year. And so part of the legal requirement is that each school committee vote to appoint a superintendent to the SEAM Collaborative Board. And this probably reminds me that I should share with you more materials. SEAM provides materials for school committee members if you're interested. And I will be sure to pass those along to you more regularly if that's something you're interested in.
And are these public meetings, Judy? Are there districts who send school committee members or other representatives to listen in to the meetings?
They are all public meetings, and members, there's always a public comment section. I have to tell you, no one has ever come to any of the meetings.
So where do you meet?
But we meet at the same collaborative over in the Cummings building. And you can certainly come and listen if you're interested. I can forward the agenda so you can see what we're going to be discussing. It's a pretty transparent process and pretty
And they
able
offer,
leadership.
it's K-12 schools.
Yes.
In this collaborative.
Yes.
What is the term to which you'd be appointed? Is it a one-year
Annually. It's annually.
It's not even saying their website.
It may not stand for anything. I don't know. Could be one of those.
Can't find it anywhere.
Yeah, I can't
I'm
find it
happy to
either.
email them. Would you
Jen
like
and I
me to
have-
email?
Email Kathy.
Or you can find out at their next
Kathy Lawson.
board meeting.
I will.
Harry Truman had a middle initial that stood for nothing. You never know. Maybe there's nothing there.
There you go.
So, Susan.
I was just wondering, now that I'm thinking about this, how much time does it take out of your schedule, do you think?
To chair this? The additional responsibilities of the chair include an additional meeting per month with another member of the board to review the financial information before the regular meeting and help set the agenda. I have one half day in October where I'm going to tour all of their programs because I feel as chair I should see what all the programs are. And I will be writing the draft evaluation for the executive director and negotiating a contract with her if her contract's up. The meetings are no heavy lifting. They usually are 45 minutes or an hour. They're pretty.
And they're close by.
And it's close by, so not a big responsibility. If you don't appoint me, I don't think we can be a member, and so because that's part of the structure. And then we would have to pay much higher non-member fees to the collaborative for our students who are there. So that wouldn't probably be a good idea. But I'm glad you asked because actually we were members of two collaboratives and one was EDCO, and it had a very high, somewhere in the range of $26,000 a year membership assessment for no students in their programs and not much benefit in terms of other than sort of the collaborative process where you get to meet with other school committee, they have school committee reps and superintendents on their board. So the board meetings were enjoyable, but the cost I thought was too high. We pay about $5,000 a year for membership fee, and you make that back in one student placement.
I was gonna say, do you
essentially.
know approximately how many students we have in the scene?
I can send you a report. I think it depends on what you count, the ones in 45-day placements, a couple dozen, I would guess, if you have all told at various points in the year.
And roughly how
Quite a few
many,
that transition in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
how many districts?
I think there are seven
10 member
7 or 8 districts. It's, Stoneham, it's local districts.
Okay.
So, Melrose, Reading, Woburn, Wakefield, Saugus. I'm probably forgetting some, Wilmington.
And their sites are based in Stoneham and
North
Melrose,
Reading,
right?
Wakefield.
And North
North Reading and Linfield, yeah. So, yeah, it's closer to 10. And they have sites they rent a whole school in Stoneham. They're always looking for space. They have programs in 3 or 4 different locations.
So, thank you, Judy.
But the reason I asked to have that pulled is because I wanted to have this explanation.
Didn't know
just
you were
to-
so interested. I should have, that's my bad. I should have given you more information as we go along. But
Thank you.
So happy to hear a motion to appoint.
I would vote to appoint the superintendent to the SEAM Collaborative Board of Directors.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then Judy, related to SEAM, there is a gift from the SEAM Collaborative.
So Jen probably knows more about this. This is the grant that we participate in for
Yes.
Project Here,
So
substance
we
abuse.
weren't even really sure that you actually officially needed to accept this, because we're not actually the grant recipients, but we wanted to bring it forward because our teachers are participants in what we received as part of this grant. So as a group, not all of the districts in SEAM, now that we know which ones they are, not all of us participated, but some of us recognized that our preventative substance curriculum probably wasn't as up to date as it could be. And so we wrote a grant together to be able to have materials and training for our teachers on that for the middle school model. And it had to be one of the research-based approved models from the DESE. So we, as a group, chose the model, and our teachers, actually the materials just arrived. Our teachers haven't done anything with them yet, and the training will start soon. So they may put bits and pieces in this year, but it would really be the full rollout for next year. And as we do with any, just as we were talking about before, we will use the pieces that make the most sense for our district and that fit in with the pieces that we're doing. So every district may do something a little bit different with it.
And how does this actually connect with students? Is this in like a health class?
Yes.
Okay.
So it'll be our middle school health teachers.
6, 7, and 8.
Yes.
So this fits in nicely with the wellness review at
Yep.
6:12.
Yep, so when Jason came, I said, good news, we're already underway. But he will work directly with them now on that piece, now that he's here, so.
It's nice to have GE in Boston since they kicked in the money. Susan, did you have a question? Brian, okay.
Just looking at the paperwork that we received, this is a gift from the Attorney General's office to the SEAM Collaborative. I was very confused, and then the
Yes,
SEAM
it is.
Collaborative to
Yes,
To
so
us?
it's
A
not
group of
really a
districts?
gift to us, that's why it was one of those that we.
That's why I'm confused who was
Yeah.
giving what to whom.
So it wasn't, it's, the district attorney's office is one of the partners in Project Here.
Okay.
So Project Here is actually, and they work in partnership with the DESE. So they all formed kind of a group. The funding, I think technically will come through the DESE to SEAM. We won't see any funding, but we see materials and PD for our teachers from it.
That's what ultimately what our teachers get.
Yes, that's what we're actually accepting.
Makes sense.
So I have then a question back to the chair. So we're not approving a grant from.
I like the way it's presented, Michelle. It's $20,960 of something.
Okay.
It's
Of
either,
resources, professional
it's either a
development.
check, or it's resources, or it's PD, and it has value.
Yes.
So I
With
get
the
it,
value.
it works. And we're making use of this because we're members of the SEAM Collaborative.
Right.
It makes sense.
And we wrote the grant, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
so happy to hear a motion.
I move to vote to approve a grant from the SEAM Collaborative for the Project HERE Substance Use Prevention Curriculum Grant Program.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we turn the page, we get to minutes. Susan or Judy, whoever wishes, can you just summarize for the committee a couple of the changes in the minutes we have at the table for the 24th?
Sure, Susan, do you have it handy, or do you want Frida to summarize it for you? She was the one who made the changes.
Rita helpfully prepared this extract. I had noticed that there was no section in the minutes that covered the update that was given at that meeting on the budget planning working group. But she's now added that, and I had a couple of just wording changes in what she added.
On the Healthy Youth Act, I think.
Wording changes in the budget planning or in something else?
I think that there was just a minor adjustment on the Healthy Youth Act page, which you could probably compare to what's in your book. But
Well, I think Susan was also asking, given what you wrote, which was great, how could that be sort of entered into the record? And
Oh, yeah, that was the second question.
I think that, that's a public document. It makes sense, Frida, that if we get a copy of what she wrote on behalf of the committee, it would make sense to put it
The
in
letter.
that file. Doesn't mean we amend the footer of the
Yeah.
minutes or anything, but
Okay.
that's where you would find it, that's where we discussed it, and then what Susan wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's in
the
there.
wording change in the Healthy Youth Act was just to make it a little more clear that it would include, the act would require districts to make their sex ed program appropriate for students regardless of sexual identity, or in other words, LGBTQ appropriate, and develop appropriate communication skills. So that was the one that we put in. And then for this packet, I remember there was an email about the budget planning working group, and I see that down here. So
Yep.
I guess that's all set.
Good. Okay. So is there a motion to
It
approve?
looks like an entire paragraph was removed, am I correct? The
I
last
think-
paragraph on page 38.
I think Susan was saying that was in the wrong place. Can you just repeat your question for
The last
Susan?
paragraph on page 38, that was moved somewhere, or this paragraph right here, town site capital
Yeah,
needs.
that was taken out.
Taken out entirely.
Entirely.
Okay.
And instead, there is now this section.
Which was right here.
There, right.
Okay, yeah.
And then the wording change in that, on the budget planning group, is, we talked about, sometimes, a couple of places, Frida had used the word revenue impact when it really should have been reserve
Okay.
funds impact.
Okay.
So that was.
So that entire paragraph is gone,
Yes.
not put somewhere else. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And I got thrown off here because this is paginated differently than what was in
Ah.
there. Just, minutes are so much fun.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, with the consent agenda, if we do something like this, whoever has a change sends it to Frida, and Frida sends everybody's changes. Hopefully it won't be a whole lot of back and forth out before the meeting, and we can just quickly review and see, oh, okay, she made them all.
When
We'll
I-
all say,
yeah.
it's all done.
When I make, so I guess to be clear on
Yeah.
this, it might be easier, when I got your
Yeah.
suggestions, I changed it on the Google Docs.
Okay.
So it was up in running on the Google
Okay.
Docs with the changes.
Okay.
But perhaps I should email everybody after I have done them and say, those have been.
Yes.
If you just reshare it, then everybody will see that, and we can all go look at it.
Yeah.
We don't have to have the editing privileges, we just view it and we can see it, because when you make that change, it would show up. That's a good idea.
Not to
Frida.
overly complicate things, is there any way to highlight the changes?
Well,
Yeah.
I could put them in like.
Because we won't know what questions other people have asked or what changes they've been made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I vote to approve the minutes as amended for July 24th, 2018.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I think that completes our open items because we're punting JFAB, right?
No, I've got it.
She's got it.
I have a one-sentence.
One
Oh,
sentence.
I'm sorry, you did say,
change.
yeah, but it's not at the table.
No, because it just
I
got
apologize.
emailed to me
Okay.
after the meeting started.
Tell us what's our page
However-
number, Judy?
Okay, so we're on page 63, So looking at paragraph 4 under definitions, the sentence that begins, eligible students are those who are, does everyone see that one? So they would like to substitute the following. Eligible students are those who are children of active duty personnel. In addition, children are eligible to receive services for 1 year following the discharge due to severe injury, retirement, or death of an active military parent. So what they're asking us to do is to emphasize that
The 1 year at the beginning.
the 1 year, we have is die on active duty within 1 year of service. They want to be sure it's clearer that they can have services for 1 year following discharge due to severe injury, retirement, or death of an active military parent.
So can you just read that one more time?
Sure. Eligible students are those who are children of active duty personnel. In addition, children are eligible to receive services for 1 year following the discharge due to severe injury, retirement, or death of an active military parent. So that's their suggested change in this paragraph, the definition of who's eligible and for how long. The,
Same though.
it's,
Nothing-
yeah, I think it's just a wording.
But the word
clarification.
veterans is gone, right? Am I missing that? So the veterans no longer appears in either sentence?
Right, so they're,
Right.
so they're saying active duty personnel or people who are no longer active duty but had been
Okay,
injured, retired, or died.
okay.
So I think that it won't make any substantive difference because we will be as kind and inclusive as possible.
Right.
We don't
Yep.
get a lot of kids who come from military deployment or from military families. But I think in the interest of having this accurate, I'd probably want to put the wording in that the DESC has suggested. Yeah.
Okay, so the chair will say that's a relatively minor and straightforward change, and it is a second reading, so unless there's an objection, happy to hear a motion to approve JFABE amended as presented tonight.
Pulled it out.
Are we?
Pulled it out because I had a.
Pulled it out.
Okay.
I
It's
pulled it
not
out.
in the consent agenda,
Okay.
so now we're cleaning up.
Okay.
All good, Brian?
What?
All good?
All good, yeah, no, no,
Okay.
I just,
I will make a motion to approve JFABE as amended.
All those in, is there a
Second.
second? Sorry?
Yeah.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay.
I get all the letters.
So.
You got it right.
Okay.
To chair report, just a couple of quick things. So, the only reason solar was not on our agenda tonight is because I feel like every time we put it on the agenda, we have high hopes, and at the last minute, it's just not all there. So, had some discussions with engineering and planning today. Folks are cautiously optimistic. We may have a final PPA as early as Friday. So I've just reiterated, the school committee has said we're interested, we're happy to have a daytime meeting if we need to do it, to just expedite this so we don't have to kick this down, every 2 weeks. So we'll see what comes in on Friday. That's a half day at town hall, but depending upon when it comes in, we may have something arriving in a packet, Judy, maybe Friday for some weekend reading. But I want to be sure people have ample time to review it. So we could be looking to having a meeting Wednesday, Thursday next week, if that works with folks. So you might see a doodle poll from me or from Frida on that front, but I just want to wait and be sure we get something. What we're expecting is a final PPA for the Vincent Owen project for solar panels on the third floor of the classroom wing. The high school continues to be a discussion, many different issues in play. Loading on the roof, workplace safety, setbacks from the roof, existing equipment, pathways to get from point A to point B. I think Susan has previously described how in the old high school we had staff up on the roof once a month. We have multiple staff on the roof every week now because we've just got equipment that needs to be maintained and checked and filters cleaned and coils pulled and so forth. So a lot of people in the kitchen trying to make this happen, and that work continues. So stay tuned on solar. We also, yeah, go ahead,
That's
Susan,
because
please.
of, trying to keep things on track. The FPBC did vote a recommendation to go ahead
Mhm.
with VO. And we did not yet vote to go ahead with basically the layout of VO has been approved. But we have not voted on a layout for the high school. So that's not going to come out.
That's not
until
coming Friday.
After, yeah.
No. But my sense is the high school's not that initiative's not dead. I think there may be some continued discussion around the high school, but we'll have to see where that goes. So I want to say quickly regarding elevators. So we're beginning to get some preliminary pricing in on the elevator projects for both Parkhurst and Mystic. These are schematic numbers, so there's some questions about scope that need to be sort of better understood. So we're looking to have a meeting later this week with the architects and maybe one of our electricians at DPW. Brian asked me at the last meeting, what about electrical upgrades? Unfortunately, it's this building that needs the upgrade. I'm almost bewildered. We have three-phase power at Mystic, but apparently we do. I don't know why, but we do. But you need that for an elevator. We don't have it here at Parkhurst, so that adds, some cost. The construction cost component of the electrical upgrade alone is, pushing $75,000 or $80,000. So we need to work through this and better understand that and other elements. But just more work to be done, but a lot of work's been done, so it's good progress. I want to say just very quickly, I'll put in this plug, if you weren't already going to do it, there is a town-wide IMT incident management team discussion. Is that?
I'll cross that off my list.
Oh, well, Wednesday, September 26th, you can talk about it in more detail, at the Winchester High School Auditorium from 7 to 8:30. And I saw this on social media, and this came up at a PTA meeting recently. Folks were interested in this and wanting to know more about what is an incident management team. So that was the only other item I wanted to talk about, so maybe that's a segue.
One thing before Judy goes to, because it involves our administrator and staff, there's going to be a meet and greet for the special education supervisors and Pam Gerard on October 5th at 9 a.m. And the location will be announced by Friday, but it will be... well, she did, didn't she?
Yeah,
Late
the
tonight.
library.
It's going to be at Town Hall.
I meant Town Hall, sorry.
Yeah, it will be at Town Hall at 9 a.m. on Friday, October 5th. And it's open to any parents in the district.
Great. Thank you.
Actually, can I make a quick announcement as well?
Oh, it's school committee member report. Go ahead.
October.
It's all good.
Yep. That you might recall that the Multicultural Network's Select Board and School Committee had sort of organized a series now of, I think there have been 5 civic gatherings last year to sort of foster a caring and connected community, and where everyone is accepted and to, keep the conversation moving. And there's going to be another one on October 17th, civic gathering number 6 at the Jenks Center, 7 to 9. And the theme is to connect anew to foster a caring and inclusive community. The featured people there will be Richard Howard and Lisa Wong. Richard Howard will be there to sort of review and give a kind of presentation on the challenges, challenges met and challenges that still exist in our town. And Lisa's mainly there as part of her listening tour to meet people and listen and learn about all of the different community organizations that exist. And so Judy's going to be there to talk about the schools briefly. Phil Belts of the Council on Aging is going to be there to talk about, seniors and activities that involve and impact them. And then we're going to sort of break up into smaller groups and talk about other community groups and initiatives are invited. The Multicultural Network will talk about what they do, and I'm sure people will be coming from different groups around town. There's, very active volunteerism in our town, and that's part of what we want to talk about and share with Lisa and with each other, try to recruit some more, newer residents. And so we hope people hear about it. It's not that long. Between now and October 17th, and we just wanted to start getting the word out on that.
Great. Thank you, Susan. So, if you don't mind saying a couple more words about IMT, and then
Sure.
I'm also going to ask you, do we have any sense of end date for McCall Phase 1 with the connector? I see more worksheetings going up, and when we might expect that to be done.
Sure. So let me start with IMT. We've had a long-standing district incident management team, which is really a safety committee, to proactively involve police, fire, and school officials. It's increasingly focused on social emotional well-being as well as sort of traditional safety preventive measures. And so the IMTs work kind of behind the scenes, but are very effective in terms of, there's a one district-wide committee coordinating, then there's one at every school. So the district-wide committee is going to present sort of efforts that we've been undertaking in the last few years to keep kids safe and healthy in our schools. And so the IMT group will be presenting at the high school 7 p.m.
And will they be taking questions afterwards?
There'll be a presentation piece and then a question and answer piece.
Good.
Sort of
Thank
a
you.
who are we, what do we do, and then questions. Last night I attended the PISC meeting. It's a very active PISC group, very strong involvement. A couple of school committee members, Michelle and Susan, were there, along with representatives from all of the parent organizations, both school-based and non-school-based, and WIFI. And Anne Marie Tan actually did a very good presentation talking about service learning, so that was well received. The Commissioner of Education visited Winchester. New Commissioner Jeff Riley came with 2 staff members, also Senator Jalen and Senator Lewis, came to Morocco School for an hour yesterday and visited some first grade classrooms, and then heard a presentation from some students who've done some performance-based assessment. It was well received, and we were honored to host him. In the next few days, Thursday, there'll be a public release of the MCAS and accountability information. It is embargoed until then, so I can't really tell you anything, except that as one data point in terms of how we measure student success, overall our students did incredibly well. And we don't have anything to worry about in terms of accountability. And so, at this point. And so, while there's always room for improvement, and we look at the data to be sure that our curriculum, instruction, and assessments are all kind of aligned in some way with the skills that are assessed on the MCAS, it's, again, we don't want to overemphasize the results, but I just want to send you a signal in advance. You may hear some things on Thursday about excellence in our district. And again, only one point of data, so. Buses. I want to commend Ellen and Marie and Nancy, who've been working tirelessly to try to make minor adjustments to bus pickups and routes to minimize traffic and get kids to school safely and on time. As you heard from the high school students, we have adjusted slightly pickup times at the elementary level. We're opening schools a little bit earlier to allow for parent drop-off. That's sort of still underway. And we're trying to do what we can to help address traffic concerns. There will always be a traffic issue between 8 and 8:30 in town. That's just going to happen. And so people need to be patient and need to leave extra time. But all of the buses are arriving well before the start of school for both middle and high school. And I've asked Ellen to take another look at 2 or 3 of the bus routes where more kids are on the bus than we expect. There are some kids who were riding the bus without passes, and there are kids with lots of stuff, big kids. And so I just want to make sure that the number of students with passes doesn't exceed the capacity of 2 to a seat for middle and high school, 3 to a seat for elementary. And so we do have in reserve, I guess, half of a bus for morning. A morning run or an afternoon run, not a full bus for a full day.
It's better than half the bus.
Right, just the front half. Just the front half. We're leaving the back half in the lot. And so if we do need to add an additional run either morning or afternoon, we have some capacity to do that. So, so I'm pleased with that.
Can I
Not
ask a
perfect
quick
yet, but
question on
yeah.
busing? When we were talking about the school start time change, there was an idea that maybe there would be a traffic study in our future, that might be a good idea. Or are you still open to doing something like that, or working with the town, or?
So my suggestion is that the traffic study be paid for through the $500,000 in the McCall project that's allocated for traffic study.
Certainly in the McCall general area.
That was
Well, that's where the traffic
That's where
is.
the traffic is.
Oh, okay, well.
Coincidentally.
Going
I'm
toward McCall.
biting my tongue, but go ahead, Susan.
I think I'll just be satisfied with yes.
Right. It's really up to the town to do a traffic study, but we'll
I
certainly
know, but
cooperate.
I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
if you had sort of thought, oh, we don't need it.
Oh, no. I mean, I would have
Okay.
lots of ideas to provide input to a traffic study. Unfortunately, the way our streets are set up does not lend itself to major improvements without changing some streets in some way. I mean, there are some things we can do to
Need
sort of
some
slow down.
Major underpass structures
Well, I
instead
think
of
there's-
rotaries to start.
There could be some one-ways, there could be some right turns only at certain times. I mean, that's what
Monorails,
traffic.
I was gonna say, get the Hyperloop on the agenda for the next meeting. That's what I call Elon Musk right now.
Yeah, get the Jetsons.
We need a grant from Elon
Would
Musk.
it be fair to say that as part of looking at the busing, that we've also been, have we been reaching out to schools to make sure like the crosswalks are okay?
Yes, there's more work
and-
being done with the crosswalks.
Yeah, so without a
Crossing
formal
guards.
traffic study, we're also already looking at some other.
That's safety.
The things
Absolutely.
that we have responsibility for.
Right. Jen, do you want to talk about the PD day coming up briefly, or no?
Sure.
Okay.
I always like to talk about PD.
Okay.
So very excited. This is our one of my goals for this year is about using our tools to be more effective and efficient for everyone in the district. So the tools do the work, so people can stop doing that piece of the automation. So we launched this year for teachers to be able to track all of their PD electronically, sign up for things electronically, and then the people who present get their own list of who's in there. It's great. So this will be our first time rolling that out. We expect some bumps. But in terms of the content of the PD itself, we're very excited. We have over 30 workshops for Friday's half day, and they run the gamut of all the things under our goals that we've been talking about. We have quite a bit of teaming up of people working on things, and teachers leading things, and people taking, like doing the trainer, like PD that they did, and then practice it in their classroom, and then coming back to share with others. So we're pretty excited. So it'll be a great day.
Can I ask a question about PD? When you have teachers and administrators putting on PD, aren't they missing out on the opportunity for themselves to do PD?
So that's a great question. We struggle with that because our PD time is so limited. So what we do is we typically, for most roles, we ask people that if they're doing something to do it one time. So we have 3 half days and 1 full day, where most of the full day sessions are 3 2-hour time slots. So we ask people to do one of those, so that ends up with, that's 6 a year. So people do 1, attend 5. There are some exceptions, so very interestingly, what we've tried to do is we have people that we use almost every PD and need to, like our ITS, like some of our social emotional roles, because otherwise we would spend a fortune outsourcing all that PD. So those people instead, we try to support their PD on other days, and we have them run PD. So like just today, we approved a couple of different intensive technology workshops for our ITS that they'll do on different days, and they'll run PD on our PD days.
Good, okay. I'd also like to make a plug for that leading PD is also PD in and of itself.
Absolutely, it's like teaching something, like how I thought I
See
knew
one,
all
do
about
one, teach
Shakespeare
one?
till I
Yes.
taught it. Yes. Yes.
That is a leadership opportunity as well, and
Right.
that you also relearn.
Yeah, but we do miss, it is hard, like I was just saying yesterday, we did our PD for the All Evaluator group, and because I was doing PD on this new module for PD, for the leaders, I was bummed because I couldn't go to some of the
Always
other
one
things. Yeah, exactly.
It's never enough for you.
Do you consider like taping them so people can watch them on their own?
Yes, so we've done that with a few. People have said that they don't find that as effective because what we really try to push people in this new module, when you're leading a PD, so when Judy put in hers about PLC, it asks what kinds of activities you're going to do because we're pushing people to do engaging things, so it's not a sit and get workshop. So it's not as effective if you're just watching, you miss, okay, now you're at a station discussing this or those pieces. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, but it is, we are gonna try to do that for some more things that are more quick hits of like how to observe something. Or also we are launching this year classrooms, things that happen in a classroom, so that people can actually see somebody implementing an initiative they've worked on.
Last update is on McCall Phase 1. So the classrooms are fully occupied and completed. The last piece to be completed was the connector. And they tell me that it should be done by October 4th with the glass installed and the doors, some doors in. I'm not sure they'll be the permanent doors, but we were hoping on the McCall open house, before the open house, to allow that space to be available for people to walk through and take a look at. So we're still kind of waiting to make that invitation to be sure that it'll be done. Ellen, did you have any more information on?
The last update I had received was hopeful that the doors would be all in. However, there were some delays with the manufacturer of the doors due to some weather and some issues where their manufacturing plant is. So temporary doors would be installed if need be.
So is that holding up things like interior finishes and lighting
All the interior's done.
in the connector?
Oh, in the connector.
So this is just the connector.
Right,
No.
so things were not finished in the inside because the doors needed to be weather tight.
Right.
However, from what I understand, they were taking the workers and doing other things that needed to be done on the outside.
So we'll
Well,
keep you up to date.
I mean, it'd be nice if the connector's done in time that some teachers can actually find a way to use that outdoor space, which you know, I think is looking terrific.
It is looking great.
It's an opportunity.
I know about that bamboo.
Have you
Quite the
seen it?
bamboo.
Looks great.
Have you seen it?
As long as it's not the invasive bamboo.
Exactly.
It's all contained by
Repeatedly.
concrete, though. It's not gonna.
I've asked
to
them,
invade
assured
anyway.
it's a good kind. so.
Good.
Can I ask if there's, I assume you would be telling us otherwise, there's no issue with the current students or teachers right now getting to and from
No.
that space? Okay,
No.
good.
James made provisions, there's no
Excellent.
issues here.
So I want to circle back to two questions then on the busing piece, and it's both to you and to Ellen. So there was a time, six-ish years ago, when we discovered we had some buses where we just did not have room. We had more kids on that bus than we should have. And the district actually had to lay down a pretty black and white rule with the North Suburban, which was if there are kids that are standing, you're not driving. And so it was difficult for a very, very short amount of time, because there were some buses who had to go make a run and then come back and pick up kids who were left standing. And when we followed that sort of harsh model, it was pretty quick to figure out why that was happening. Were there kids who just hadn't bought bus passes, or did we sort of oversubscribe a bus? So I've heard anecdotally we still have some kids standing. I don't know if that's morning or afternoon runs.
We don't have kids standing.
If there's any if there's truth, and let's say if that's true, I'm always concerned about that, because that is a legitimate safety issue. So
Well,
I hope we're taking that seriously if
Yeah.
that feedback's getting through
We
to you.
can find that out because we have cameras on all the buses. But if students are standing, it's because they don't want to sit next to somebody.
But sometimes they've stood because there wasn't a seat. That's my point. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I'm not sure I have evidence that that's true, but we will look at it, and we're going to check bus passes again, particularly at middle and high school, which is really the only place. It's never at the elementary level that's an issue.
High school.
And then,
It's
so
a
also
safety
to Michelle,
issue, so It's a safety issue, so.
I don't want kids standing on a bus.
right. So, but to Michelle's question, you were asking about crosswalks and safety sort of on the route to school. I want to be sure I'm clear about what actually is happening, whether we're doing it or the police department's doing it, because at drop-off, you know, we've got staff out there at the curb, we've got principals that are sometimes out there, and or they're in their office. I don't see school staff, you know, in Morocco land, I don't see school staff up at the intersection of Bates and Washington. We have an officer now because we had somebody moved on, we have great crossing guard, moved on and retired, and we're missing him already. So could you or Ellen just speak to what exactly are we looking for at our intersections and crosswalks during the whole drop-off pickup exercise? Are we actually making observations to be sure it's working well? Is the police department doing that? I just want to understand explicitly what Michelle was asking about. What are we doing,
Sure.
if anything?
So there's a safety officer appointed by the Winchester Police Department, and Ellen has met with the safety officer, and the safety officer has also met with the Lincoln and McCall principals recently to talk about crosswalks in that area. there's a shortage of crossing guards. So I posted on our Facebook page and tweeted out the application that's, the notice of vacancies for that. I think that the number of crossing guards that the police department funds is really pretty astonishing, and it probably quadruple the number I've had in any other district. So we have quite a few walkers, and we have a lot of crossing guards. Somewhere north of 30, I think, that I heard employed, when you think about it all over town with the various elementary schools and so forth. So so the two principals at Lincoln and McCall spoke with the police department. There's one problematic additional crosswalk that may or may not be necessary, where people who are walking are choosing to cross in one place and they could walk further down and be at a place where there is a crossing guard that's not very far away. So there are often decisions like that where people can safely cross with a crossing guard but are choosing to cross in other places. There are also people who are delayed in arriving to school, and the crossing guard is already gone because the crossing guard is only paid till 8:15, which is 10 minutes after school starts. And if people are walking after that time,
elementary?
For elementary, if children are walking after that time, then sometimes they could be caught without a crossing guard. And so we are in good communication with the police department about this. They are in charge of crossing guards. We are not in charge of crosswalks or crossing guards, but we try to give feedback and try to be sure that kids have safe routes to walk. We want to encourage students to walk because that's a safer alternative.
So is it your understanding the school safety officer is out there making rounds somehow, like in the morning or at pickup, to just see sort of firsthand how things are going?
So I'm not privy to what his schedule is, but what I would say is if we get reports that there's an area where there's insufficient support for crossing guards, we forward that to him. He's been pretty responsive. Ellen, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add from your conversation with him.
He's been very responsive to emails that we've received from families. In my conversations with him, he's raised some very valid questions and did a very nice job of meeting with both the principals of McCall and Lincoln to discuss parent drop-off and pickup patterns, how things could be improved upon.
Right. And I guess the other thing that I would say is that Ellen has been extremely responsive if parents have had safety concerns about where the bus is dropping off or picking up or what side of the street, and it's doable to switch things. She's been, able to accommodate most parents who've asked.
And I'm sorry, I want to ask this because I know this was such a difficult issue for the longest time. Drop off and pick up at VO. This is our first school year with the traffic light fully up and operational. Is that right? And so that was really, we were hearing that was a problem. Is that better with the light? Is it?
I haven't
do we
heard.
know? I haven't heard the complaints that I used to hear.
I have not heard any complaints.
Okay. Yeah. No,
So.
maybe it's the light. Okay.
I have avoided driving that way because I took my life in my hands crossing that intersection too many times with people dashing
Before the light.
across before the light was installed.
Sure.
And my life was flashing before my eyes.
Well,
What
and
little remains of my life was flashing
I was
before
biting my
eyes.
tongue earlier just because when you were talking about like where the traffic and congestion is, yesterday morning on Highland Avenue from Forest Street all the way to Mount Vernon, that is over a mile.
Backs all the way
It
up there.
was literally a parking lot, and it's backed up a lot. It was the first time in my almost 20 years in this town I have seen Highland Avenue
All the way.
gridlock all the way. I'm talking back behind Winchester Hospital, all the way to the 5-way intersection, and that was 15 minutes before the elementary bell was ringing. Contrast that to this morning, when there was a forecast for rain coming within 15 minutes of the elementary bell, and there was no backup on Highland until like Park. So the variability of this is confounding to me. There's no
Right.
way to predict, and that's got to be very maddening for families, but that contributes to the frustration, right?
There's
Is
been
you-
some construction also.
And
in
when
the center.
anything happens on 93,
Right.
it
Yeah.
changes everything.
But there was some construction in town, and then there was also a rotary fire, manhole cover rotary fire, and at the same time there was construction moving traffic to one lane in some parts of town.
I mean, I just bring it up because you've been pretty consistent in saying families, it's a new change, it's a new schedule, please leave extra time. For some families, they leave extra time, and they leave more time on a Tuesday they did on a Monday, and they get to school even later. So I think this town is just continuing to work through this, right? The effect sort of on the traffic study piece, the consequence of us putting that many kids in school and having them arrive by many, many cars is going to be affecting traffic patterns in a way that maybe some commuters who used to drive through town are going to decide to just take 93. Hopefully it'll sort itself out soon.
Right, and I encourage on days where it's appropriate not to have kids have door-to-door service. And I know that some students are carrying a lot of things like
Yeah.
sporting equipment and so forth, but for those who are not, walking is a great alternative and very healthy. And I think the expectation that you're going to be able to get across town in 10 minutes and drop your kids at the middle and high school is probably unrealistic. And if you want to do that, you're going to have to be patient and sit in traffic. That's just the reality. And I know that people are upset by that, but we're not set up, the town was not set up, the roads were not set up to transport 4,700 kids door to door to school in automobiles. It just wasn't designed that way, so.
And if we get bike racks at our elementary schools, they can be taking their bikes too, right?
I am very open to bike racks and just have to get a funding source because they can be expensive to
Lynch
install.
has some.
Kids park their bikes wherever they need to. We have that ramp. They're good.
So thank you, Judy, future agenda items, report on MCAS testing and accountability, which we'll apparently all learn much more about on Thursday. Technology plan update, report on how do we measure success for our students. Long-term budget planning report, this is sort of part of our override discussion. FY20 budget development, so this is really about sort of
Process.
just laying out the process.
Yeah,
We're not
and
really
timeline.
voting a calendar per se, we may have a rough draft. And then a wellness action plan update, so that was something I asked to put on here because we actually voted that plan, I think, last October. Two other things I think we should add on here, Judy, for future are, you mentioned one tonight, World Language Curriculum Review. You said a presentation by Anna in October.
Yes.
And Brian has been working hard with the Capital Planning Committee and giving me some updates and Judy some from time to time. Maybe we could get Brian on the agenda for our next meeting.
Okay.
Give us a sense of how that's shaking out, if that's all right, Brian? Any other?
I think we also heard from Jenna and Emma tonight that there was a report that she might.
If you would
Right.
like, we're
Yes.
happy to put that together. But,
Yeah.
I'm not requesting that, I'm happy to do it. so.
I know, I was saying, I think we heard
I don't wanna
that
make-
was available, and I'd like to
Yes.
add that.
Okay.
I don't want to make more work for you.
It's
If there's
fine.
something you'd like to share,
It's
please
fine.
do.
Which content area? Math?
I think people were asking about the process and about the,
Oh.
so I thought we could just pull in the pieces
Yeah.
to the overall
Okay.
process. Does that
Curriculum
make
And
sense?
some
process.
budget ideas.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't have our next meeting date on here.
Have it, though.
Is it? We have it. Frida had sent it out.
October 9th.
10-9 and 10-23.
10-9, 10-23, and just to remind folks, so when the election comes, that was scheduled for a Tuesday, which is why we're doing the meeting on a Thursday, right?
Yeah, November 8th.
November.
Yeah,
instead
in
of
November.
6th.
Yeah, in November.
Yep.
Yeah.
Be here before you know it. I hope.
That might be town meeting night.
It is, I
It
think.
is November 8th is the first night of town meeting. So
We
it's
are.
not going to be
Yeah, maybe
possible.
we shouldn't do that.
Well,
Take
we'll have a meeting, but it'll be a brief meeting. Okay.
It's already posted it would be posted
All
for
right.
before town meeting.
So let us work on that.
Okay.
Do we have a hard start date from Lisa Wong? I was thinking as you were talking about her.
November.
November, okay, but presumably we'll see Lisa and Richard, okay. All right, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, thank you very much.